Notes, this meeting will be held electronically as per section 19, of the town's procedural bylaw, number 6228-19, as amended due to the COVID-19 situation. Council, can you get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Gaertner, Councillor Humphreys, comments, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have no community presentations, no delegations at this time. Consent agenda. We have one item, 6.1, memo from Councillor Gaertner from Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. Is there any comments or questions on that, or anyone would like to pull that item, or I will ask for someone to move? Councillor Thompson, do you have a question, or did you want to pull that?
I did have a question. I can just ask it now, or we can pull the item and have it later.
If you think it's a quick question, then I'll allow it. Otherwise, I'll just say, let's just pull it.
It has to do with the strategic plan, so perhaps we just pull it in that way. It gives both Councillor Gaertner as well as perhaps Mr. Waters a chance to respond. Absolutely.
I think, yeah, if that's the case, then it'll probably be a little bit more of a conversation. So yeah, we'll pull that then. Okay. We'll move to advisory committee meeting minutes. We have two items in there. Is there any comments or questions on those ones? Otherwise, I'll ask someone to move 7.1 and 7.2. Someone like to move that? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Kim. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. So we'll move to 6.1 to start off with. Councillor Thompson, you pulled that item. It's to receive for information. Would you like to move as is?
Yes.
Thank you. Would someone like to second that? Councillor Humphreys, thank you. Councillor Thompson, floor is yours.
Thank you. You know, I'm happy to put this out there, and whether Councillor Gaertner would like to answer it, if not, perhaps through to you, to Mr. Waters. I just, in the memo, it talks about Lake Simcoe and embarking on their strategic plan. I took time to look at the presentation with regards to look into the future. And I want to know, you know, from the process, how much of an engagement there is with the town in terms of the development of that strategic plan. As we all know, the town is a notable funder of Lake Simcoe. And so they do have a number of different initiatives that pertain to us. And I would like to think that we certainly are a key stakeholder and are engaged in the process, but we'd just like to hear a little bit more, either through Councillor Gaertner or Mr. Waters, about that engagement, because I did note that they're quite proud of the fact that it was being done internally by staff, and I applaud them for doing that, but certainly hope there's an opportunity for Aurora to be involved.
Councillor Gaertner, did you want to take a stab at that, or did you want me to go to Mr. Waters?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. I don't believe there is any engagement with the municipalities. I think there's ongoing engagement throughout the years. And our staff is, certainly in the loop. But as far as coming to council, I don't believe there's any engagement.
Councillor Thompson?
Perhaps Mr. Waters or our CEO, Mr. Nadarosny, may have something additional, and if not, I'll just provide a quick comment then.
Sure. Mr. Waters, did you want to add to that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I have not been personally contacted regarding the engagement around the strategic plan. I can't speak for ANCA or any of the engineering staff or the operations staff, but personally myself, I have not been consulted to date.
Councillor?
Then just as a comment, and perhaps Councillor Gaertner can take this back as our Lake Simcoe representative, I just think that there are synergies to be had when having alignment within various organizations, be it the region, be it the town of Aurora, be it Lake Simcoe, in terms of all trying to move towards the same goals, especially with regards to the environment and climate. And so I think there is good reason to work together on these and have some of that conversations and engagement. We are a significant supporter. I don't know the exact amount that Aurora contributes to their budget, but it is notable. There is a number of works that are done in Aurora as well through Lake Simcoe, and they do a great job. But I just think that it makes sense for all of us to work together and ensure that their goals and future sites align with ours and vice versa. So perhaps you can take that back and Doesn't necessarily have to come to council, but I would certainly hope that they would work with our staff as well and make sure that's alignment. If they'd like to come to council, I would certainly welcome that as well.
Thank you. And it's a good comment, and I will take it back. And they usually come to council when things are finished, mostly, to give us updates. So yeah, I'm going to look into that. Thank you for raising it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions on item 6.1? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. So, Council, we will move to item 8.1, draft fiscal strategy. We have a presentation to be provided by Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, the Director of Finance. Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just sharing my screen here and we'll get started. So this evening, I'm presenting to you an overview, or what I like to call the Coles Notes version of the fiscal strategy document that you have before you today. And so we'll get right into that. So this is an overview of what we're going to be looking at. Again, I'm going to be going through this fairly high level, and it's much more detailed in your package this evening. First thing to talk about is financial sustainability. This is the overarching objective of the fiscal strategy. So the financial sustainability talks about financial stewardship over the long term, adapting to make sure that we do not have any major year-to-year impacts on our fiscal work, ensuring that we have the money there to replace and maintain assets as we go along, and adapt to changing economic circumstances. We also want to make sure that we balance the fiscal needs between today's residents and residents in the future. The fiscal strategy proposed this evening has 4 main pillars. They include capital planning, reserve management, debt management, and revenue management. Where these intersect is where we balance the fiscal strategy to ensure that we're able to meet our fiscal obligations over the long term. We have evaluated each of these 4 fiscal pillars through these 5 strategic elements. These 5 strategic elements times those 4 pillars result in 20 specific fiscal objectives that are outlined within the detailed document. And those are what makes up the overall guidance for the fiscal strategy. So if we jump into the first pillar, this is about capital planning. And when we speak about capital planning, we're talking about very, very long-term capital planning. So there are a number of graphs throughout the fiscal strategy that are based on the BMA study, the 2020 municipal study, which is based on information from the 2019 results from the FIR. When we look at Aurora's asset consumption, so the amount of assets that are considered to be used up on financial terms, Aurora's assets are here at 33.7% and still got a fair bit of life left in them. It was fairly similar between the different funding sources, whether it be tax, water, wastewater, or stormwater rates for all the asset classes. It didn't vary very much. When we look at our own information, so this is the current assets that we have and currently own. The larger teal columns reflects our tax funded assets. And you can see from the 2020s to the 2030s, there's a relatively significant increase, but it balances out over that. And we have applied a factor of inflation to this as well, but this is only based on current assets. But when we look at stormwater, there's a very significant increase from the 2020s into the 2030s. So we do need to plan for how we're going to manage those assets over their life. And then for this water and wastewater, we have more time. So we have the time to plan and make sure that we're able to maintain assets. Those are in the dark blue. So in the 2020s, we're looking at 15.3 million worth of asset management, which increases to almost 100 million in the 2050s over that 10-year period. So for capital planning, these are the strategic objectives that we have put together to make sure we can meet our long-term capital planning needs from an asset management growth perspective, and then also how we manage it year to year from the budget, and also balance those needs over time with growth and how and when it will occur. As part of the fiscal strategy, we are also going to end up developing a strategic action plan, and there are a number of strategic actions which are explained in more detail in your package this evening. So these include policy items, longer term forecasts, reviews of different bylaws and other studies. And you can see for here, we have a number of them for capital planning. Now, to pay for all this capital, we need to ensure that we have the money funded in the reserves to be able to do so. So we also need to take a long-term approach for that as well. The BMA study looks at the 2019 tax reserves per capita. And as you can see, the study actually shows our reserves fairly high at 1,087 at this end here towards the left. However, when we pull out the hydro reserve, which was factored in based on the FIR results, we're actually at the lower end of $570 per capita, which still puts us in good company among other municipalities within the GTA. Reserve management, again, is about that long-term asset management. We also need to ensure that we have the funds available to pay for growth, and then also how we are going to manage this over time with the budget, and then also making sure that we don't have any fiscal shocks, because we need to balance growth and asset management needs. Reserve management, in here, we are going to be taking another look at all the reserve bylaws, looking at reserve management policies, and then also developing longer-term forecasts. Managing reserves over a long term ensures that when we get to those 2050s with those water assets that need to be replaced, we have the funds available or planned to be able to do that work. Debt management. So debt can be a very useful financing tool if it is used wisely. So when we look at debt repayment costs, that's the principal and interest we pay on debt on an annual basis, compared to our own source revenue, which is most revenues except development charges. The BMA study showed us at 2019 at being 1.5%, very far over to the right here. When we factor in the additional debt that we've recently approved to date, it puts us at 3.2%, which means we are still very well managed at this point. The province actually legislates the maximum at 25%, which I do not recommend. We get anywhere close to 25% for sure. So what we need to do is we need to continue to stay well managed. And that's what these fiscal objectives are about. It's about when we should use debt, when are the best times to use debt, and making sure that we're planning for it carefully. So we're leveraging that financing tool when it is most appropriate. For debt management, we make sure that we have a very comprehensive debt management policy, the appropriate process flows, and also start developing longer-term debt forecasts. The last part of the fiscal strategy is about revenue management. When we speak about revenue management, it's about enhancing the sources that come from areas other than taxes and user rates. When we look at our 10-year capital plan, most of our reserves are contributions from taxes, which is the blue sections, or user rates, which is the green. When we look at the other section, we include development charges, grants, investment income, and other revenues. The best opportunity for us to reduce the burden on tax and ratepayers is to try and expand upon those areas to make sure that tax and ratepayers are not paying more than they need to. To do this, the objectives speak to invest in maximizing grant opportunities, leveraging our investments to make sure we earn investment income, and seeking out other opportunities to make sure that we have the funds to pay for assets as we go along, and planning for them when the assets are being built. The strategic action plans here speak to seeking out more grant opportunities, moving forward with the prudent investors so we can earn more investment income, and doing longer term forecasts, particularly for our rates for water, wastewater, and stormwater. And this will also help with our reserve requirements as well if we do these longer term rate studies. The next step in the fiscal strategy is developing a strategic action plan. So this will explore those strategic actions in much more details and break it down into a more detailed plan. This will be maintained as a living document, and it will build upon a lot of work which is already underway. That includes our recent improvements to the capital budget, our development charge study update that we're currently in process, and the second generation asset management plan. But once we build these things and we put the fiscal strategy into action, we need to monitor it and report against it. And that regular reporting will happen as part of the budget process. We'll be monitoring key performance indicators of financial health. And these are forward-looking indicators of financial health rather than backwards-looking ones the statements reflect. And we'll also update and adapt the strategic action plan over time to reflect the current circumstances at that time. So thank you, and thanks for listening to the presentation this evening. If you have any questions on the presentation or the detailed document, I'm happy to help you with those.
Thank you, Ms. Myra Van Kessel. Council, first, we have the recommendation that's in front of us. It's that report number FIN 21-027 be received. And 2, that the presented draft fiscal strategy for the town be approved. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gilliland, any comments or questions to the presentation or the report? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. Great presentation as a side comment, but I did have a question about the wastewater management reserves per capita. Should we be concerned about our wastewater management reserve? I know that one of the main comments that I do get from residents are the cost of water and the bill that has risen just based on stormwater management and so forth. And given the fact that, you know, we will need to, I guess the repair and recovery in our old infrastructure is going to increase. And also just, you know, the size of our 200-year stormwater management, I'm just foreseeing a lot of high costs. And already we're paying, I mean, I feel like it's pretty expensive just based on some feedback. So should we be concerned about what we have in reserves now?
Myra Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of doing the longer term studies is to help us understand how concerned we should be about the money we currently have in reserves and enable us to develop a path to make sure that we're going to be in a good place in the long term. Until we do that analysis, I can't speak to exactly where we would be at this point in time. And that's part of why we're establishing the fiscal strategy, and the strategic action plan will help us understand where we are today versus where we need to go. And we can come back to council with options to make sure we get to a sustainable level.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I mean, I did notice that we were kind of far along on the low end of how many reserves we had, and just understanding that our infrastructure is really old. I just kind of wanted to get an idea and a pulse on how concerned we should be, just where we're at. Another question I had is, I know that this consultant group was showing how Aurora compares other municipalities based on our reserves in general. Was that health really just the assessment assessed just on the per capita, including the hydro reserves, and then we're just showing what it looks like without it? Or did we have a fulsome overview where the health of our reserves were without it in general?
Ms. Myra Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So for the analysis in here, we took the information from the BMA study, which is based on our financial information reserve, which is our reporting to the province. What that does is it happened to include the hydro reserve. So to show a better comparison, and especially with the intent for which we're using the hydro reserve, and the fact that tax reserves generally support asset management, it was a calculation done by the finance team to pull out the cost of that hydro reserve and show the amount that's there with and without the amount as well.
Councillor.
Thank you. I appreciated pulling that out so we can have an idea of what that looks like, because it does make a significant difference in where we are now, or will be rather. Another question, just going on one of your pages, you said identify where new reserves should be created or existing ones should be reviewed. I'm just understanding, if we were to create a reserve potential, and just forgive me, maybe just because I haven't been on council long enough, do you have an example of like what you would create a new reserve for? I just feel like we've kind of got all the buckets. Is there some, or is this just, am I just reading into this too much?
Ms. Myra Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of this is actually just taking that review of the existing reserves we have, looking at what the intent of those reserves are, and if there's reserves that match up to legislation, make sure that they're still aligned. If we were to create a new reserve, we need to have a specific purpose for which we would actually need to use that reserve. So we wouldn't just arbitrarily create one. There would need to be a defined purpose for that reserve.
Councillor.
Thank you. And that's what I thought, but I just wanted a little bit of clarity on what you meant by that. Last question. Just about more or less debt forecast. I understand with development charges, you know, we do have some monies that will be coming in, and it's a delicate balance. You spend, you borrow, but the development charges will end up, you know, paying for itself. And just with all the inflation that's happening right now with supply and demand and labor and all that, should we be concerned about the value of the DC charges that, you know, we have or will be collecting in the future and how that'll contribute to a project? Are we looking at that?
Ms. Moira Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is where the DC forecast and the debt forecast would integrate with each other, because there's oftentimes where growth comes ahead or growth needs to be built before the actual growth arrives. So it's making sure we balance that timing difference, and that's where debt comes into play. But again, part of setting up the actual debt management policy would look at things such as minimum balances in reserves or preserving certain amounts within reserves to ensure debt can be paid, and looking at it from that perspective and setting those policy objectives in place to ensure debt stays well managed. Right now, we are still at that low end of the spectrum as far as debt is concerned. So we want to make sure that overall we stay in that well-managed area. We do not want debt to creep up too high.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I did appreciate that you did show the capital project that we just recently approved and where that would put us from the 1 point whatever percent you had there increase, because I'm sure that some council members, yeah, it was 1.5 to 3.2 just to see what that difference was, because we just approved that in, I guess, early 2021. Is that correct?
Ms. Moira Van Kessel?
Yes, that's correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor?
Perfect. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, and actually, can I just clarify something, Ms. Moira Van Kessel? From the presentation, Aurora's assets are relatively young. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they're about 1/3 used, so we still have plenty of life left in our average asset.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, for the detailed report. I found from my readings and from my experience in council that, you know, governments tend to be reactive in their nature as opposed to being proactive and preemptive. And I think of all the municipalities I've read about, and, you know, certainly I'll be biased, you know, Aurora has been very proactive as much as it can within its government mandate. You know, most fiscally responsible organizations, whether it be public or private, you know, they go through, various due diligence and specifically stress tests, financial stress tests. Have we considered as a town, as an organization, to do, banks do stress tests, every few years, especially the last 10 years since 08, 09 financial crisis, in terms of their loan loss reserves, future spending. And I'm sure there is a way. It's not going to be specifically like a bank or a private corporation, but are there ways that we can be more preemptive and proactive with respect to our financial situation and put together a regular stress test so that residents and council alike would feel more assured?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
For you, Mr. Mayor, so part of the fiscal strategy includes doing these longer term forecasts, and especially in figuring out what our longer term reserve requirements are. So as we establish what those are and we come back to council and get agreement on how we are going to approach funding these reserves and what our policy is going to be over time, that becomes our goal and our target, and essentially the stress test that you're looking for, because it talks about how we are meeting those future obligations and if we're going to be prepared for them over time.
Councillor?
Thank you. And, especially with, I'm glad that we're looking at, debt as part of our pillars. And, certainly our last big project with Library Square, we realize, I think we've all realized how timing is critical to an investment, whether it be a town investment or whether it's a financial investment in the financial markets. The timing is critical. And I think we've learned over the last 12 months that have we delayed, I know many residents and council alike, or at least some members of council, have said that we should delay 3 months or 12 months. And we know, and having done my calculations, based on the fact that non-residential projects, commodity costs are 40% of the overall costs, and it would have resulted in millions of extra costs if we had delayed. So that said, I mean, part of the preemptive and proactive ways that I was thinking is, there's interest rate risk because a lot of projects and debentures that we tie ourselves to are real-time short-term rates as opposed to a 5-10 year fixed rate that we fix ourselves to. And I know some projects have longer-term rates attached to them. So would it be advisable to, for us to have staff look at what future rates are going to be? Because future rates at 3% is going to look different from what we're paying now at 1%. And that would impact our cash flows in the future, even commodity costs for whether it be a skateboard park or whether it be Library Square or a new multi-use facility. Those costs, potential costs, could weigh on our debt ratios. So has it been considered by staff to kind of look at those types of preventative or proactive strategies?
Ms. Werner Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the big challenges we have in a municipality is we always have many projects and unfortunately not enough funds to do all of them in the timing that we would like. So it's a lot of it comes down to prioritizing of capital projects and also ensuring that we do this longer term planning. So while we do look at the rates and what they're trending to, we also have to do our prioritization and our balancing and making sure that we do plan for our asset replacements, because those are some of the things that we cannot actually change. Our growth, we can adapt a bit, we can use debt, we cannot use debt, we can make those decisions. But particularly for asset management, we need to plan ahead.
And thank you. And my last question would be, you mentioned that, and you've mentioned in the past as well, that our provincial maximum debt repayment levels is 25%, and we're certainly far off that. And you said yourself that that's not a figure that we want to be even close to. And fortunately, we do have that large buffer. We're only at 3.2%. But what would that equate to? So for those of us who would like to attach a number to that, if we were to attach a debt repayment ratio of 25%, what would that mean? Because that would essentially mean that how much more can we spend? So do you have an idea what that, if we reach 25%, what that debt level would be?
Ms. Werner Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would have to get back to you on what that specific number would be, but that 25% would include tax levy, and to have 25% going back to repaying debt, we'd need to make significant cuts to our tax levy or significant increases. So I do not think that's something that we'd want to do.
Councillor.
Yeah, and where I'm going with this is that I think it's important because a lot of people who don't know how we manage our finances think that we have, a multi-million-dollar project, so it's going to weigh on us and it's going to burden us excessively. But this is the way that municipalities work. And so I think it'd be nice to have a metric where if we want to have a debt ratio of 10%, what does that look like? Does that mean that we have does that equate to a $10 million potential? If we have a need to, have another project, do we have 10 million available to us, 15 or 20? I think, or that conversely, that could be used as a buffer. So, it'd be nice to have that financial figure available in future budgets and strategies. And sorry, one last question. I'm not sure if I have enough time, but my one last question is, you mentioned that we have, it's necessary to have key performance indicators to ensure, our current and future financial health. What are those financial indicators that you're referring to?
Ms. Werner Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they will come through the established policies that we will be creating. So we will create a debt policy and how it aligns with that and setting a target. We will be looking at the policy for how we fund our reserves and setting longer term targets for our reserves. So it'll be a comparison to where our forecast is, how we're contributing to reserves over time. So it's those types of metrics that we'll be looking at and from that perspective.
Councillor.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I do have a question, but perhaps Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel can pull up her presentation. I just wanted to look at slide 13 again, the current level of tax funded reserves. And while she's finding that, I think I just, I certainly want to give, a lot of appreciation and thanks to Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel and her team. They put a tremendous amount of work into this document. We were fortunate as part of the Finance Advisory Committee to see it in its initial stages and have some further conversations about it. I certainly like the concepts being proposed by Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel, and more so, I like the fact that it's going to be a living document, that it will, continue to evolve, and that, council will continue to get reports long into the future with regards to the status and the financial health. Because I think it's important. It always is a little bit of confusion whenever we start talking about reserves, because there are different buckets. And I think this graph provides a good illustration of that. So through you to Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel, this doesn't necessarily show us the entire reserve picture for the town of Aurora. This is really just dealing with tax funded reserves. It doesn't take into consideration any of the other buckets. Is that correct?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. This is just tax funded. It does not include reserves such as development charges, water, wastewater, or stormwater reserves, or parkland, and items such as that.
Councillor.
I mean, so, for those that perhaps aren't, very familiar with municipal finances or how things are partitioned within the town of Aurora, you would look at that and you might be concerned because we're more towards the lower end of the tax funded reserves. But at the same time, if you were to pull up our schedule of reserves, I mean, we have $25 million in tax funded. We have $18 million in utility funded. And, furthermore, we got 16 million in development charges, and another almost 40 million in through special purpose. So overall, the picture presented is a little bit different than that particular slide. And so I think it's always good to, when we do our report card on our financial health, to try and keep it as simple as possible so that people can understand, because many homeowners, we all have different accounts. We might have a general checkings account, but we might have an RSP account or an education one for our kids. But I think it's good to show the total picture for the town and our health when it comes to reserves as well. And so while I think it's good to show this particular portion, I think it gets too easily confused if you don't understand the financial picture very well, that there are different buckets for different things. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gaertner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, my thanks to staff for this great amount of work and more work to come. And it's good quality. Thank you so much. On the asset consumption ratio chart, just out of curiosity, at 33.7 is on the lower end, but then you have a city like Toronto, which must have some extremely old infrastructure. So they're only at 38.8% consumption. Would that be because they've invested a lot of money already to upgrade their old infrastructure?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not something I would be able to answer without knowing your appropriate asset mix.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. I do have concern, and it was expressed with respect to the amount of money we're going to be putting towards our stormwater management, in particular flooding. And I think we got a 20 to 25 year plan to do everything that we need to do. So, by the time we hit the 2030s, we're going to be into full-blown climate change. Would you recommend taking on debt to increase that? I mean, we just don't have enough money, or we could do it faster.
Ms. Wainwright.
Thank you.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what we would like to do is actually take a look at what the overall requirements are to establish that plan, and then look at the options. So this could be a combination of options, with debt just being one of them. We could also look at what the rate requirements would be to contribute to the reserves, among other things. The other piece is ensuring that we seek out any potential grant opportunities that may help us pay for these assets as well.
Councillor?
Thank you, because I think we wanted, it was done on a priority basis chart. I think we were worried about, if I remember correctly, Fleury Park and the flooding in that area, and that was going to cost, I think, $5 million. It was a big price tag for one project. But on the other hand, we want to make sure that our residents and our infrastructure is protected. That's a comment. A question, in your experience, has any municipality put forward a new reserve fund for climate change?
Moira Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any specific reserve funds for climate change. But in this case, if we were talking about stormwater, we want to be having a stormwater management reserve. So for stormwater asset management, not specifically climate change, so that we can fund it appropriately to the funding source.
Thank you. I think that's the right answer. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Under the key strategic actions in capital planning, review our strat plans and studies for affordability. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Ms. Moira Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's taking a financial lens to a number of the strategic plans we have. A lot of the plans we have specific growth targets. Many of them are based on an ideal scenario, but they're not necessarily reflecting what the financial means may be. So it's understanding from the financial perspective, the affordability of those plans and what it would take to ensure that we could either complete the plan or the choices we may need to make.
Councillor?
Thank you. I'm thinking about the 2019 budget. We approved a lot of studies, but when we do that, I don't think we take into, well, I guess we can't know how much something is going to cost, but we don't even put a placeholder of any kind into the next budget year. In this case, we're way behind that. The 2019 budget studies won't be happening, I think, won't be finished until this year. So we didn't have to put anything in our 2020 budget, but can you speak about that? Would that be a wise thing to do because if we approve a study and then we get the study and it says to us we have to spend, X amount of money, and we don't have that money, especially if it's a study that the public would really want to be followed through on, then we're in a bit of a difficult place.
Ms. Moira Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's when we could present the options, financial options relating to that study to council, so the council could make an informed decision on how they would like to proceed.
Councillor?
Thank you. I was trying to figure out if we could do it, before we pass in a budget that we're going to do a study, if there was any way for us to know how much we might have to spend to enact the recommendations of consultants. Thank you. Do you know what the debt repayment costs are as a percentage of our tax income or our taxes?
Ms. Moira Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do not have that specific number in front of me. Our own source income also includes things such as user rates and wastewater rates, fees we charge for programs and things like that. So I don't have those numbers in front of me. I'll have to get back to you.
Thank you. I think residents want to know how much of their taxes are going to debt. Thank you. With respect to our asset management plan, when we had that presentation from the consultants, I believe they said as of 2018 or 2019, we were there was $27 million worth of that plan that we couldn't fund.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of that asset management plan, when we get that work, that's going to be what's contributing to our overall capital planning. And that will also help inform those reserve management studies. So it's one of the pieces in the puzzle for figuring out how to navigate the fiscal strategy.
Councillor.
Thank you. That's all for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo. Oh, Councillor, you're on mute.
Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Through to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, just a question on next steps and timing. It says that putting the fiscal strategy into action will require the development of a detailed strategic action plan. The development of this plan will begin after the approval of the fiscal strategy. So I assume the approval of the fiscal strategy means council, and at the end of this month. Does that mean a detailed strategic action plan will start, and how long would that take before it's complete, and would that come back to council?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we have started on developing pieces of what that detailed strategic action plan will include. And we have started working on pieces of it, like through the development charge study. It's going to take us some time because we're identifying some very specific actions, like updates to specific bylaws, specific types of reserve analysis. So we're looking to try and get the actual action plan developed by this fall. The actual work that comes out of that, though, that's going to take quite some time, because there's going to be some fairly detailed analytical products that do come out of this.
Councillor.
Thank you. To you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I ask is just trying to get a sense of timing, and because further down on page 67, it speaks to it's an integrated part of the budget documents and council's discussion through the budget process. And I'm wondering, would it be complete in order for us to, I guess, reap the benefits of this during the next budget process?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there will be some benefits that we will reap through the 2022 budget process, but as we move along, we will gain more as more of the work through the strategic action plan gets completed. It's just a matter of how much we can get done and when we can get it done.
Councillor.
Thank you. So the intent is the fall of this year, through you, Mr. Mayor, to have it complete? And would that come back to council?
Yeah, and I see some nodding yes. So Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, did you?
For you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we plan on bringing it back to council, and then we'll show what our plan is for the detailed strategic action plan. And then this will be the plan that we use to work on over the next few years as we complete a lot of these products.
Councillor.
Thank you. And I'm happy that we're taking a very long look at our finances, because you know, a short-term view on things aren't always the best way to analyze, I guess, and to plan. So I'm happy we're doing that. Just to Councillor Kim's argument and I guess discussion on the debt we incurred and whether we had waited or not. I hope he's correct, but I'm not so sure that the curtain has fallen yet. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gillen, second time.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up, I guess what Councillor Gallo was suggesting about the reporting back with DC charges and future outlook. And that was one of my main concerns about, you know, the inflation and whatnot. And are we going to have enough information to give us a really good outlook on the health of our, you know, our long-term view with the value of the DC charges and reserves we have, with the projects that we're currently moving forward with that inflation. So are we going to have some sort of sense of how that's going to impact us in this next report?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So then what we're talking about for the fall is the actual plan. So like actually setting the plan for doing all these various actions. When the products come out, they're going to give you a longer term view on everything. But part of the budget process is that annual update, the annual review of looking at where we are and how we are progressing towards our fiscal strategy and adapting for any current economic circumstances. That's why the plan has to be fairly flexible, because if interest rates increase or costs increase, we need to adapt and manage to that as we go along.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I think it's important that we do keep an eye on the moving interest rate, as you had said, and obviously the costs of material supply, demand, and labor. I certainly wouldn't want to hang my hat on the assumption that a project wouldn't have incurred extra costs due to inflations. I know it's not unusual for whether it's residential or commercial that developers have just decided to walk away because the costs, they're certainly not going to be doing a project to lose money. And a lot of it's out of their control, and it's across the board, not only with materials, but shipping. And I think we just got to keep our eyes and ears open, because things can shift and change regardless if we've secured something or not. So that's just a comment. And I hope that, like you said, it's going to be a living document, and we should be able to make adjustments and change things as we see fit to make sure that we keep on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote. I'll just make one comment. Mr. Council, thank you very much. I think that Council, starting from last term to now, have done an excellent job in being very fiscally responsible and managing our finances through the town. And we've seen it as we continue to see our reserves grow while we keep a leveled tax rate across the board. And what we've seen with other municipalities is when you lower the tax rate too much, you just jeopardize your future for the present. And that's not what we do here. We make sure that we put ourselves in a responsible position as we move forward. And I think we've done a tremendous job. And I love the more detailed reporting that each year we're seeing more and more of it. So I want to thank you and your team for what you guys are doing. It's incredible. And then just one comment, Councillor Gaertner, about Toronto. I'll just throw this in. Toronto's in a different position than anybody, because when it comes to them, the province always throws them extra money. So when they find a shortfall in their budget, when they have infrastructure problems and they need some money, they just run to the province and they get it because they're Toronto. So they're in a whole different class compared to the rest of us. And I'll throw that out there because we all get a little bit annoyed with Toronto. Everyone's saying Toronto has low taxes. Well, they have low taxes because they keep getting money from the province. So there's a big difference there. But I'll leave it with that. I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We will move to 8.2, Library Square renaming recommendation. A report number CMS 21-018 be received. 2, that the renaming of Library Square to Town Square effective immediately be approved. Would anyone like to move that recommendation? Seeing none, would anyone like to move item number 1 just to receive at this time for discussion? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Kim second. Any comments or questions on this report? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Gaertner, go ahead. You got in there at the last second.
Well, my raised hand icon has changed places. I want this, I think we want this to be a destination. And by calling it, just Town Square, it could be anywhere in North America. I think Aurora needs to be in there somewhere. I want to know when the last time we did a public consultation. It seems to me it was in 2018 or 2019. Anyway, before we approved the building, before we approved everything that's in the actual square.
Mr. Rose Donahue, did you want to, or Ms. McDougall?
I can answer that question, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gaertner. The last time we did a public consultation was in April. We had, I think, a 10-day poll that went out, and that was with the 4 shortlisted names that we had. So that we had about 800 responses. And the four names were Aurora Junction, Church Street Square, Constellation Square, and Town Square. And then previous to that, you're correct. In 2018, we did a similar poll using the Place Speak format on the town website.
Councillor?
Thank you. And were those, there were more than four names generated, but were those names generated from the previous public consultation?
Mr. Rose Donahue?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The names that were generated in 2018, we did look through. There have been different iterations and variations of a sort of a communications team that has been exploring and working with the renaming of Library Square since 2018. A lot of the names, and this was mentioned in a report to council in March of this year, a lot of the names we found were suggesting names of individuals from Aurora's past, for example, Doan and Matchell, even Queen Victoria. We had Pearson, and we just found that the names at that time were probably not conducive to community amenity like this. And we wanted a name, we suggested and thought that we wanted a name that was more reflective of the changing nature of Aurora, the fact that we're growing, that our demographics are changing, and we're having newcomers into the community all the time. And we thought a number of different assets in the community have already been named after some of those early European settlers that came into the community. So we didn't, we kind of, we're at a crossroads in 2018, and we kind of left those names where they were, but we carried forward some of them into the consultation and into the internal conversations we had since that time.
Councillor?
Thank you. And in 2018, the public wouldn't have known of all of the plans for the square. So I'm wondering if we should go out again. The names that were chosen, were those chosen by you? I'm sorry, there was something in the report. Please remind me.
Sure. Through Mr. Mayor. The reports were chosen, again, it was an accumulation of research into other facilities, not only in North America, but around the world. It was the consultation we did publicly, both in 2018, as well as the online poll that we did in April. We had conversations with our community advisory committee as well, but also in April. And then, as mentioned, we've had sort of an internal working group that have been exploring and looking at these names. So it was kind of an accumulation of research, of consultation, of internal discussion that these names were generated. And the four shortlisted names that went to the public in April were the ones that I just mentioned. And based on the aggregate data, as well as the information we received from the public, the community advisory committee, mayor and council, etc., we are recommending Town Square. We believe it's the most popular name, and there is, in addition, so under additional recommendations, we do suggest that, of course, council could add Aurora to the name to make it Aurora Town Square as a final name.
Councillor?
Thank you. And what I'm understanding is that the names that were presented to the community committee, they, I think, only rejected one. That was more, that was staff looking at all of the past. And I don't know if you looked at the council consultations, but so staff has figured out or has chosen names that they thought would be most appropriate. That's what I'm getting from that. Is that a correct understanding?
Mr. Rose?
Through Mr. Mayor, that's the correct assumption. Yes, these are the names that, based on all the information that I mentioned and the process we've gone through, the names that were shortlisted, the four names, those are the ones that we thought were the front runners. And then again, the one that we're recommending today is basically the name that we believe is the most popular based on our research, consultation, etc.
Councillor?
Thank you. It's not the most popular with me. Comment for now. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Humphreys, are you trying to
Mr.
put your
Mayor,
hand up?
sorry, I don't know what's happened. I had to download Zoom again on a new laptop and I can't, there's no hand. Sorry, yes. So I have to figure that out. I just do, Mr. Mayor, I like Aurora Town Square. I do. But I'm just wondering in terms of some of the feedback and is there an opportunity to relaunch a sort of I think we talked about this before, but maybe a competition or have that type of thing, sort of like what Toronto did way back when they did the Sky Dome, and obviously it turned to Scotia Centre. But is there any thought process, that we could take a look at that? Is we're just receiving tonight? We have to come back to this and figure we need to name Library Square. And for me, I do love Aurora Town Square, but I don't want it to be voted down. So it looks like we voted down tonight anyways, but so we have to provide some sort of direction.
Mr. Rose? Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think the question is whether or not we can go out and do more ongoing engagement with the community, such as a competition. The answer is certainly yes. I mean, certainly whatever council direction we get, we'll go ahead and execute. We are trying to be as mindful as we can in the sense that there's not an imminent sense of emergency or urgency at this point in time, but we do want to align some of the renaming, obviously, as we lead into, through the construction, as well as align some of our efforts with the ongoing capital campaign that we're currently undertaking. So the short answer is yes, we can certainly do a competition.
Councillor?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a consideration and for us to think about. I mean, I feel bad. I kind of missed my chance to think, well, just, Aurora Town Square for me is a good one to start with. I'm sorry about the miss on that, but I would suggest that we go with that. And then, if something changes or evolves and we want to do a competition or perhaps there's another approach, listen to my peers. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. And just some quick comments. I agree with both Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Gaertner. In 2018, when we had gone to the public with PlaySpeak, the concept of what envisioned Library Square and designs was pretty much in its infancy, completely different take. Things have evolved and have changed so much since then. And now that the plans are in place and we have a fulsome understanding of what it's supposed to represent, perhaps going to the public and getting that engagement to get some additional ideas that, maybe, internally we never thought of. And, it's a really, really, really big project. And it would behoove me not to go back to the public and get some more feedback based on something that, all of Aurora is investing in. And, we all want to see something like this become successful and participate and have a hand in lending a name, which is so, in my opinion, is very important. As far as the corporate sponsorships that Mr. Rose was talking about, as far as my understanding, it was philanthropic. So meaning, buying a sponsorship to, buy some theater seats or name a change room, not necessarily naming the square. It's a completely different conversation. I understand, so I won't go there because I'm okay with naming the square. But Town Square to me is, that to me is the best name out of all of them, but I really feel like we can do better. I find it very basic and, not overly special, I guess, but that's, my opinion. And, I think that call to action needs to be there, and I think it needs to be current. And, here we are, COVID as well. Like, think about the impacts that we've had on families and the different journeys that people have taken, and maybe how that community feel and that presence of whatever the square, whatever it's going to be called, may come some innovation and different ideas that we never thought of, or the representation of it may change slightly in a way that we never thought. So I like the idea of a competition, or I like the idea of either going to the public and just getting some names. What's the rush? I don't really see there's a rush there. So for me,
Right.
I would like to see it go back to the public, and whether it's a competition or just getting some feedback on their names, and let's do it right. Let's not rush this through.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Thompson. You're on mute, Councillor.
Sorry. Through you to Mr. Rose Donahue. It was mentioned both in the report and I believe in one of your responses with regards to aligning with the capital campaign that's come on board with the consultant. And, I'm sure you've had conversations. Does the consultant also feel that from a marketing perspective that, it's important to find a name sooner rather than later than to continue on with the existing one with the potential for it to change down the road? From his perspective and being able to raise funds for the square, are you able to answer on his behalf about what the impact of changing the name may or may not have?
Mr. Rose?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I can't speak completely on his behalf, but I can tell you based on the conversations and the ongoing work that we're doing that, the direction we want to take is that when we do go to approach prospective donors or sponsors, we would love to have, of course, you have things like a case statement, you have collateral that you present to prospective sponsors. And so when we approach those prospective sponsors, we want to be able to say, you are giving money to name whatever the name of the facility is versus, you're giving money to, a facility that is yet to be named. So I think, based on his experience, again, I can't speak on behalf of him completely, but I think based on his experience, it does give us an advantage if we have a name for a facility when we're seeking sponsors. One of the things that we are considering is that if there is and we still have the idea of a name for the entire facility on the table, we haven't taken that off yet. So for example, if we're going to prospective sponsor, they want to know potentially that the name of their organization, their company themselves, if we are going to give that out as a naming right, that it could combine nicely with the final name for this facility. So we would love to be able to have a name that we could go out with a bit more confidence, but at the same time, it's not something that will put the brakes on the capital campaign project if we don't have a name and we go out and do a competition.
Councillor?
Thank you. I'm certainly comfortable going back out and continuing to, engage the residents and have further conversations to find the ideal name with the provision that it doesn't have a negative impact to that capital campaign. Certainly, we've identified a goal in terms of raising funds to offset some of the costs associated here. And I would want to hope that we, put our best foot forward. So perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Rose Donahue again, would it be possible for you to have further conversations with the consultant between now and the end of the month when we have council, just to gather any more opinions that he may have with regards to this issue and the capital campaign?
Mr. Rose?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly. Yeah, we have ongoing conversations and we're that campaign is well underway and we're producing a bunch of deliverables. So we speak on a regular basis. I will commit to speaking with our capital campaign consultant and following up with council at a later date with their feedback.
Councillor?
Thank you. I certainly think there are many factors that go into making this decision, and that's just one factor, but it would be good for council to know that information before making any final decision at the end of the month. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I found the hands up button. So I thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Thompson, for the feedback. I think if we can come up with some sort of conclusion by the end of this month, that would be very important. Although there isn't an immediate need for a name, I do believe that, it is June, and I'm wanting to see, our facilities as booked as possible. And I think having a name would be a lot easier, not just for fundraising, but for booking events and so on, that, that this is gonna be one of the places to be. I do love Aurora Town Square. I know it is what it is. But it is a town square. So I struggle with that, but I wouldn't mind just to reconfirm with you, Mr. Mayor, that, we'll hear more information before the end of the month from staff. And, if there's a need to go back out or have re-engagement with the public, if there's some sort of campaign that we have a small window to get information. It's been out there for a long time. We can do a powerful marketing campaign to get some ideas. We may come back to, and then I think again, it'd be our decision at the end of the day. So I guess I'm just talking in circles because I do love Aurora Town Square, but perhaps more community involvement, engagement one more time. And then I look forward to what staff has to say. I think I'll leave it at that now. Thanks. Sorry for the rambling.
No, you're not rambling. I think what I heard from Mr. Rose is that we can get some more information by the end of the month. We can have a little bit more of a discussion, and we can give direction at the end of the month. We don't have to give direction right now. Right now, all we have is just a receipt. Councillor Gaertner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure I heard Mr. Rose Donahue correctly. Phil, did you say that we might have a donor's name on the name of the town?
Mr. Rose?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can you clarify, Councillor Gaertner? Do you mean a name for the entire facility?
Yeah, I thought you said something about the fundraising and we might want to give somebody, I guess, the honor of calling the town square after them. Did I hear that completely incorrectly?
Mr. Rose?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I will say that we do have a closed session report that will be coming to council on July 6th. It will be summarizing some of this information. A lot of those decisions, of course, are council's to make. What I will say is that we are considering, every possible asset that comprises Library Square as a possibility for naming rights. And so we're working through a valuation chart right now. And those are internal conversations that we're having with staff. But of course, everything will be summarized and brought to council as a sort of an update in July. So at this point in time, we haven't taken anything off the table. We are considering naming the entire facility, and then we've gone through the different portions of the building and the components that make up Library Square, and we've assigned a valuation to those. So again, that information is forthcoming, but nothing's off the table at this point, Councillor.
Councillor?
Thank you. I'll hold my comments to the closed session. I mean, I wouldn't want this square named after. Anyway, I'll just leave it. I like Aurora Town Square. It says what it is.
Thank you, Councillor Gaertner. You don't want to call it Councillor Gaertner Square?
Not even in my dreams.
I'm just thinking. Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. And just some quick comments. I won't talk about the naming rights other than the fact that I've never had a challenge with the naming rights. I do think it had some value, but moving along, I just heard some comments about timing, and I reflect on the Toronto Raptors. Toronto Raptors, we knew it was a basketball team. They did a contest, it came back, we all knew what it was. You know what you're selling. And I feel like this is no different. We have consultants, they're hired to do a job, they're hired to sell the idea, they're hired to sell the romance of what they're investing in. I can't see how this could be a challenge. I'll look forward to see what Phil comes back with, at the end of the month. But at the end of the day, this is what they're hired to do. And it's just like with any concept or idea, you're selling the idea, the concept of design. I think that we have plenty of design and concept and inspiration to put forward to get potential people to philanthropically donate if that is that's the model we're going forward with. So I just don't see that that's a challenge. And I hope we don't all hang our hat specifically on the consultant, because at the end of the day, this is what they're hired to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this one? I'll just add, I too like Aurora Town Square. I think it speaks exactly to what it is. And the majority of the public picked it. Yeah. They like it. And I think down the road, when you hear people saying, I'll see you at the AT Square, or I'll see you at ATS, or, I think it's catchy. I think it speaks exactly to what it is. It speaks to the fact that we are a town, that we're small. with big city amenities, and I think it's all wrapped in there. And if we were to change it to anything but Library Square, that's probably the only name that I would be okay with moving to. If we're not going to pick Aurora Town Square, we might as well just leave it Library Square. That'd be my 2 cents. Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Move to 8.3. Cash-in-Lieu of Parkland Deferral Agreement, Board of Trustees of the Aurora United Church, 15186 Yonge Street. The recommendation is 1, that report number PDS 21-059 be received. 2, that the cash-in-lieu payment of $68,500 apportioned to the property owned by the Board of Trustees of the Aurora United Church be deferred until such time that the uses or other circumstances change on the property located at 15186 Yonge Street. Would someone like to move forward the recommendation? Councillor Humphries, second. Councillor Thompson, comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just I'm not sure to which staff, but I just want to confirm whether or not, I didn't see it in the report, we've done this before, and if so, with whom? If not, okay. Or have we been asked before and denied? I'm just trying to get a little more of a history, whether this has happened before, and try to be consistent.
Mr. Waters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. There was a deferral of CIL for the Salvation Army when they built their new building in 2015, I believe. That's my only understanding of this deferral being used in recent times.
Councillor?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, is there anyone else that can either have a longer history and give a better sense of if it's happened before, if it's been denied? If that's it, then that's fine. But
Mr. CEO, do we have anyone else? Do we know of any others? Or maybe Councillor, maybe if we take some time between now and the end of the month, maybe if we can dig up some past records, if we can find anything that speaks to exactly what you're asking, and maybe we can go that way, just in case, because I know a lot of our staff have only been around X number of years, so we might not be able to have someone that has that knowledge, but maybe we can find it in some older reports. Mr. CEO?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say that that's the only one we're aware of is the Salvation Army one. I'm not sure if anybody's ever asked. I don't know of anything being turned down, but I also don't know of anything else of it ever being asked before either. So that's my only point of reference.
Okay, Mr. CEO, can we just take a look and see if we can find anything by the end of the month? Okay. Councillor?
and that's fine. It's not urgent. I just
okay. Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I was going to mention the Salvation Army property and what we did in the past. I think the connection is it's places of worship that we looked at, and really, as far as I know, there haven't been that many built in the last 10, 20 years, and that may be why there's not too many in recent memory, but certainly we did it for the Salvation Army, and I'm comfortable doing it for the church as well. I think it's important to note, and through you to Mr. Waters, it is clear that the only thing we are deferring is the portion that would be associated with the church. The retirement residents will still pay their fees. Is that correct?
Mr. Waters?
Mr. Mayor, that is absolutely correct. Yes.
And I think, I just want to think that that's an important point to bold and call out the fact that this is strict, even though the development is, intertwined to a certain degree. This is strictly just for the church and not for the retirement residents.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, and then Councillor Gaertner. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be in favor in deferring the portion that's allotted to the United Church. Cash-in-Lieu was, in theory, or in practicality, for new developments. The church existed before, and they're just rebuilding what was already there. So certainly, it would be, just reason to defer the cash-in-lieu. And as it was mentioned, it's a place of worship, and the congregation for many decades or century have provided a great service to the town in terms of they volunteered in a lot of programs to help our local residents. So certainly I'd be in favor of deferring the cash in lieu.
Thank you. Councillor Gaertner.
Thank you. I'm trying to, first of all, I'm in favor, but I'm trying to understand from what the church has said, what they have in mind what timing do they have in mind? I can't tell from the wording on this report how long the deferral might be.
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the deferral, it could be there for quite some time. It would be triggered, a CIL payment would be triggered either by a change in use or a change potentially in ownership if the use, but as long as the use continued to be a place of worship, the CIL would not be required.
Councillor.
Thank you. And the church would have, I don't know, it's so long ago, but the church would have paid this charge originally. I don't know if anybody can answer that, but anyway, at this point in time, I'm fine with it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Oh, Councillor Gaertner, you want to go second time?
I just with the Salvation Army, have they paid the cash in lieu?
I would assume they haven't because their use hasn't changed, but Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. Their CIL has been deferred.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I think Councillor Gaertner just answered my question just based on the letter that was written. I guess I'm just going to wait for the follow-up at council. I just want to know if this is setting a precedence. It looks like it's, I get the premise of it and I understand why they're asking for it, but I'll wait till council next week for more definitive answers. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll be in favor of the deferral as well. As was mentioned, we've done it with the Salvation Army. I have no problem doing it here. If the use does change, taxpayers will collect that money when the use changes. So at this time, to me, this is a way that we continue to make sure that something that was a historic building in our town gets rebuilt and comes back to the downtown core. So I'll be in favor. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 8.4, request for increased capital budget authority for the Aurora Snow Storage Facility, Lambert Willson Park. Recommendation is 1, that report number PDS 21-061 be received. 2, that the total approved budget authority for capital project number 34006 be increased to $1,190,000, representing an increase of $290,000 to be funded from the services related to a highway DC and stormwater reserves. And 3, then $175,200 and $114,800 in previously approved capital budget authority for project number 34707 and 31108, respectively, be transferred to project number 34006. Would someone like to move the recommendations? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Gilliland. Any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I guess through you to, I wonder if Mr. Downey's here, or would it be Mr. Waters?
Maybe
Mr. Waters. I guess, I see in the executive summary that it certainly states that the pandemic has resulted in significant increases to the costing, and that's why it's before us asking for that increase. But this particular project has been in front of council for many years. We've talked about, the snow storage facility at Lambert, Willson Park for 5-6 years and had many, many reports. You go back just a few years and, we had a capital sheet for $350,000. Then, it was expanded and modified for additional pieces to it. and it, you know, it was reapproved at 900,000, and now we see it before us at you know, the additional 300,000 to get us to 1.2. I guess my question is that, you know, sure, right at this point in time, supply and demand dictates the fact that the prices have gone up. But, you know, there's always the probability or possibility that, you know, as we return back to normal, that there is going to be, you know, a swing perhaps the other way, and prices may return somewhat to normal as more supply comes online. In which case we could defer this for a year or wait it out, and the price may go back down to the 900,000. So my question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Waters was, you know, has any consideration given to delaying the project as a result of this increase, or mitigating the cost by, you know, taking a look at the total project and removing some of the components so that it fits back under the original budget figure of 900,000?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we have not looked at scaling back certain components of the project. The project really, you know, the difference, you know, has been assigned or been is a reason. The reasons for the change is that construction materials and the cost of labor have increased. And second of all, it's also the time of year we tendered out the project, which you know, is sort of springtime when the contractors are starting to collect work from other projects. So there is a bit of a premium placed on that time frame as well.
Councillor?
So through you to Mr. Waters again. So are you implying that should Council not approve this and we go back out to tender at another time, that it's more favorable, that the cost could potentially be less because of the timing as well as the changes in pricing for materials?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a crystal ball, Councillor Thompson, to give you a yes or no on that. It's hard to predict whether a labor and material costs will stabilize. You know, I mean, the supply and demand of economics, if there's more product, the price goes down. But, you know, that I can't crystal ball that for you, sir.
Councillor?
I guess perhaps, again, through you to Mr. Waters, what is the rationale or the need to do it now as opposed to a year from now? Because as I said, this is something that we've discussed for multiple years and we've managed without it up to this point.
Mr. Waters?
For you, Mr. Mayor. There is no rush to do it this year. It should be done because the water, or when the snow does melt, there is no quality control on the water going into the creek. So there is an impact from that perspective. Also, it may be a good time to do it this year because of the fact that you know, the park will have to have limited users in it as well. And with COVID, you know, there's been some impact on that as well. So it needs to be done. The question is when's the best time to do it?
Councillor?
Thank you. You know, my comment really is that, you know, I voted in favor of it in the past, and I agree that there is a need for it. The question is, you know, does it warrant spending the extra $300,000 to do it today? Or do you, you know, consider postponing it with the hope that the cost goes down? And Mr. Waters is right, there's no crystal ball to it. But, you know, it's something to consider. I guess the other question I have through you to Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel is, if we're seeing this increase to construction costs and shortage in this particular project, are we seeing it in other projects, and are we expecting for the remainder of the year to continue to see reports like this whereby staff are going to ask for increases in project budgets because of increases to construction costs and materials and so forth?
Ms. Mary Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I do not have a specific answer to that right now, but one of the things that we are developing this year is part of our interim forecast that will come to council next month is capital forecast as well. So it'll project the spending for capital projects that we will have, and that will provide council with a better overview of how much we are looking at spending on capital projects and have updated information on costs known to date.
Councillor?
Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think from the report, and I've come to the conclusion that certainly it's not a necessity at this time, but certainly it needs to get done. And I did have communications with staff earlier, and my one question I have before I comment would be to Mr. Waters. As Councillor Thompson mentioned, this project and various renditions of this project has been ongoing for several years. Is there a reason why this wasn't done earlier?
Mr. Waters?
For you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know, sir, because I wasn't at the town. I know that this version of the project was, I think, costed out around $750 a few years ago, and a decision was made not to approve it at the budget process for whatever I don't know. So that's my sort of understanding of past projects on this particular item.
Councillor?
Thank you. I mean, fortunately, we have those two projects, Project 34707, which is the lighting upgrade on Wellington and Birdsea. There was a surplus of funds because engineering obtained a grant from the region under the municipal streetscape program, and that was very fortunate. And Project 31108, it was just delivered with savings, and including the contingency that was on that project. So, fortunately for us, it's moving from one project to another. Certainly, it'd be nice to put the excess back into reserves, ideally. Councillor Thompson raises good points as well. It's, from my experience, from the investment world, when it comes to commodities, you will have those spikes, and then you might have a little bit of a drawdown, and then you kind of backfill it. And considering that we're in the beginning of a new economic cycle, and given with all these infrastructure budgets that's coming out of the States, probably in Canada as well, you're probably looking at an expansionary economy where commodity prices will at the very least stabilize in the midterm. So, we can certainly wait to see if next year, if commodity prices come back in, but we're talking mostly about concrete, brick, gravel. And fortunately, all these commodities are the prices are not just based on local conditions or factors, but these are commodities that are global in nature, and there's a global price to it. So there are things that are beyond our economic forces here domestically. 30% is a lot. There's other commodities like lumber that have gone up 300-400%. So, I'm not sure if we're fortunate or not, but, fortunately, brick and concrete hasn't gone up nearly as much as other commodities. But, my feeling is that we go ahead because, anyone can second guess us. And, but, based on, mine or everyone's educated decision, I think I don't believe that commodity prices are going to come down significantly. So my feeling is to go ahead with this.
Councillor Gaertner?
Thank you. I agree with what Councillor Kim just said. My only concern is that we're paying more because we tendered it late in the season. Is there any idea how much more we're paying for that?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know I don't have an indication of what the price difference would be between an earlier 2021 tender versus, a spring 2021 tender.
Councillor?
I'm sorry, my attention was taken away. What is the price differential?
Mr. Waters, could you state that again, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, through you. Councillor Gaertner, I do not have an indication of the difference in price between a January 2021 tender versus a spring 2021 tender.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm not sure. I'll have to decide at the council meeting. It seems to me that this is as it says in the report, a challenging environment for staff, challenges for staff. And certainly it's not good for the environment because the water runoff it's not treated in any way. We've waited so long. I really would like to be able to do this, but I think maybe we need to wait till we get a better tendered price. That might just end up being, the same because of circumstances of construction material. But I do want to know, I'm not sure, Mr. Waters, if you would be able to answer this, but we would install oil and grit separators, which would help cleanse the water. Is there any way we could also do something about the salt that's coming off the runoff?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would have to speak to Anka about that particular item. My understanding is the oil and grit separators deal with quantity and quality control, so hopefully it would cover that, but I can confirm that for you.
This has been on the table since 2004, 2005. It doesn't take the salt away. And we know that salt is a big problem for Lake Simcoe, but we haven't discussed it in many years. So maybe there are some new ways that we could take the salt out. That would be a great help. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, call the vote. All those in favor? 3. Opposed? I was in favor. Sorry for it. That passes. .5 application for site plan approval, Silhouette Aurora Inc., formerly Bara Group, 15086 15106 Yonge Street. Part of lots 1 and 2, registered plan 9, and lots 51 and 52, registered plan 246, file number SP 2018-03. 1, that report number PDS 21-064 be received. 2, that the revised development concept for site plan application file SP 2018-03 to permit the development of 53 stacked townhouse units continue to be approved in principle, subject to the following conditions. 1, that all outstanding comments, conditions, and requirements from the town and external agencies be addressed to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning and Development Services prior to the execution of a site plan agreement. 2, that the owner obtain minor variance approval for the required exceptions to zoning bylaw number 6000-17 as amended, as identified in Table 1 of this report from the Committee of Adjustment. The committee's decision for the minor variance shall be final and binding, and the applicant shall satisfy any conditions of approval imposed by the committee. 3, that the owner enter into a site plan agreement with the town to address requirements of the town and external agencies, including but not limited to the provision for payment by the owner of all applicable fees, securities, and any other financial obligations. And 3, that council revoke servicing allocation for 6 townhouse dwelling units. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gilliland, thank you. Any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gaertner.
Thank you. I can't really tell from the design, but from what is going to be put in this development, it's a slightly better development in some ways. The first one had no 1-bedroom units. This one has got a fair number. So it's a more equitable arrangement for people who might want to move in there. It says in the report it's located within a wellhead protection area. I don't remember that from when it came to council in 2018. Is there any issue with the wellhead protection area?
I'll throw that to Mr. Waters, but I'll add in, I think, Councillor, from what I remember, that was where now currently that little parquet area is going to be. And I think that was why it was designed that way, that side wouldn't get developed on. But Mr. Waters, if I might be off, but that's what I kind of remember.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Lake Simcoe does not have any issue with the proposal, and I'm not sure if what Mr. Mayor said is accurate or not, because I've not heard of that. But I would not doubt Mr. Mayor if that's what he's saying.
I'm just trying to remember from our conversation, Councillor Gaertner. Maybe Councillor Thompson or Humphreys or Kim might be able to recollect that conversation, but we'll see what happens.
It's 3 years ago, Mr. Mayor. You know, you could be right. The problem that I have with this is one of the things that we wanted was to have with the promenade plan was to have a little area where people passing by could sit down. And in the last iteration, there was, you know, a bench and some flowering material. I believe from my read of this that is missing. And I'm wondering, I mean, it doesn't fulfill the intent of the promenade plan. So is there any room here to add a tiny little bit of community space along Yonge Street?
Councillor, and I'll answer that. Mr. Waters can jump in if I'm incorrect, but we all remember the original rendition was down the middle would be open to Yonge Street and people would be able to go in, and that's what we approved. What they've done now that they've closed it off, if you look to the right-hand side, so to the north, running along Yonge Street, there's a whole new parquet there that is accessible to everybody as they walk along Yonge Street.
Oh, okay.
Sit down and utilize. So that's the
Thank
change.
you. Thank you. I didn't read that properly then. Thank you very much. The only comment I'll make is we gave them a 1.1 parking ratio, and we didn't require any visitors parking, and there's no accessible parking here. With respect to the visitors parking, you know, we already have a parking problem in downtown Aurora. So it would, I think, if I may say, we were amiss in not requiring some visitors parking. I think there's either 4 or 5 spots, but there's, I don't know, 56 units. You know, it's really nothing. So people will be parking on Yonge Street, and I don't know what happens in the winter when there's snow clearing and there's restrictions for parking on Yonge Street. I think the neighborhood streets are pretty filled with cars or have restrictions. Guessing there's nothing we can do about it at this point. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Waters, parking spots?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just add to the comment on that little open space amenity area, which is accessible from Yonge Street. There will be a plaque there. This was a former site of the George Browning House, I believe. So there will be a plaque there. There will be vegetation there. So it'll be open to the public. It's not accessible through the condo corp. So it is open to the public. With regards to parking, this site plan before you implements the provisions of the zoning bylaw, which council approved in 2018. And the parking standard is 1 per unit. That's what was approved. That's what's in the promenade plan. For townhouse uses, barrier-free parking is not a requirement. It's only for apartment uses in the promenade plan. And so we only have 1 extra space here, is my understanding.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, we can't go back. We've already approved it, but I think it's something council should think about in the future because we already have a parking problem in the downtown area. And through Mr. Mayor, Mr. Waters, when I was reading the report, it sounded to me like the public could only kind of look at the plaque, that there was no room for a bench or anything like that. So I hope Mr. Mayor is correct Can you confirm that?
Mr. Waters, and I'll just add, Councillor, if you look at page 140 of the diagram of the new drawing, you'll see on the north side there how big it is. There's tree plantings and there's room for a bench and all that. So, yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
Is that all, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Gaertner asked the exact questions that I was going to ask about the parking, and that I wasn't on council prior, but generally it's been approved and conforms with all our current zoning standards. And that's not something that we're addressing today. So perhaps you can confirm that.
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. There will be 2 variances that are required for the redesign that has a porch and stairways encroaching into the setbacks. That's just a reflection of the design. Those variances will have to be approved before the site plan is executed.
Councillor.
Perfect. I just wanted to understand the specifics of what we're approving today, and you've answered that question. As far as the encroachment in the side yard, is that something that we've approved or set some precedent with the buildings just north on Wellington on the west side? By the Bank of Montreal dollar store?
Mr. Waters, the stacked townhomes.
Yes.
Were done by Treasure Hill. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm not aware of that. My understanding is they have a site-specific zoning bylaw that was custom developed for their particular development. Whether or not they required variances after the approval of the zoning bylaw, I can't comment on that.
Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, perhaps maybe by next council, you could get back to me, or just offline, just kind of send me some information on that. That would be great. Other than that, I won't go into parking because it seems to be a moot point, but at least the question was asked and I appreciate the answers. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Waters, as has been mentioned multiple times, the zoning bylaw amendment as well as the site plan was approved in 2018 for 59 units. This is a revised proposal in front of us. I just want to understand, I guess, the implications that if council were to vote this down and refuse it, then the developer could just go ahead with the previous plan with the 59 units. Is that correct?
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In theory, yes, Councillor Thompson. However, from an engineering and structural load perspective, that previous plan that was approved by council in 2018, in principle, it cannot be developed. So that's why they brought forward this updated redesign of the site. And second of all, their appeal rights have crystallized. So if council does not make a decision on this application and to support it, they can appeal to the LPAT.
Councillor.
I certainly understand the LPAT component of it. I just wanted to understand, I guess, what influence or latitude we here on council could have with this current application, given that it was previously approved in 2018. Given the fact that you said that it's not developable under the former plan, then perhaps there is an opportunity to make some suggestions in terms of some minor modifications. But certainly do like the fact that we've gone from 59 to 53. And some of the changes that they've made, and so. I did support the original proposal and I'll support this one as well.
Thank you. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over the last several years, myself included, I've really focused on the technical merits of a project. But other than the last, 2 or 3 years, I've neglected on I think the most important piece, which is the aesthetics. I think I commented when this project came to public planning that I did not like the aesthetics. Given that this is our downtown core, we have a significant asset being built that's currently being built and hopefully will be ready next year. And I would like to have something aesthetically pleasing, but what we have in this design is essentially a generic design by a famous architect that essentially sells the same design to multiple developers. It's like you and I buying a home, and we just go to the internet and buy an architectural piece for $500 instead of hiring an architect for $10,000. And even if it was, it's not the cost of the design, because I still don't know what it costs, but I think this design cheapens the area. I mean, we want this to be aesthetically pleasing. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Waters, I know the answer to this, but I'll ask just in case. Does our promenade, our corridor, have architectural design controls or guidelines?
Waters?
For you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it does, Councillor Kim. It has our, your promenade plan does have an urban design strategy, has urban design guidelines. And the the control architect that we use to help with the peer review of the planning partnership did review this and did support the elevations and the materials that are being brought forward to you today.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I certainly haven't cornered the market in good taste, but I personally don't like this design. I think we've declined other designs in other of our major streets for aesthetics, and so for that reason, I will not go ahead and approve this. For that reason, because aesthetics is important. That's streetscape is important. A lot of people make buying decisions on streetscape. So I think for that one reason, I cannot go in favor for it. But if in the next 2 weeks, if they can give us a different elevation that has more stone or some classic features in it, as opposed to a modern kind of square top, structure, I might change my mind. But right now, I don't think I can approve this project as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just on that point, has our, I'm not sure if I have the name correct, but our design review committee reviewed this?
Mr. Waters?
For you, Mr. Mayor, no, the DRP has not reviewed this. However, our urban designer, which is the planning partnership, has reviewed these elevations and are supportive of them.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I know that, I read that and I heard that. Is there a reason why our committee of residents didn't contribute to this?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, there is no reason. We do have the planning partnership who does sit on the DRP, but we did not.
Councillor, point of order? Are you calling a point of order, Councillor Humphreys? No? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Waters. I saw the clapping hands pop up. So go ahead, Mr. Waters.
Yes. Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we did not bring this forward to the DRP, but the planning partnership does sit under DRP.
Councillor?
Yes, I'm trying to understand, through you, Mr. Mayor, how come we didn't ask that committee? Isn't that before, unless we don't normally for these types of projects?
Mr. Waters, did they I'm assuming they reviewed the initial application.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Councillor?
Thank you. And I get whether they reviewed the original one. I'm trying to understand why they didn't review this one.
Mr. Waters?
Significantly different.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we brought it forward to the planning partnership as urban designer, as they had initial input into the review. We can certainly bring this forward to the DRP. It would just delay the approval of the application before you.
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I can better understand, because I'm not understanding what triggers us asking the committee that we put in place to do this very thing. Where's the trigger? Is it arbitrary, or is there a trigger when we say we need your input?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The trigger really is that it's part of the Aurora Promenade. That's the trigger. And also if it has a heritage component as well. That's typically the triggers for bringing forward to the DRP. We've brought other matters outside the prominent of DRP as we find their input helpful. But we can certainly bring this forward to the DRP. But again, we have the planning partnership that is on the DRP as a contributor.
Councillor?
Thank you, and I get that, and I understand that. But I'm just trying to. I don't want to delay this because what's the point? They can take it to, normal course of action, which they probably would. I'm just trying to understand why we missed an opportunity. Why do we have a committee? Why do we choose residents to sit on a committee to review these very things, and we didn't reach out to them?
Ms. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, they're not residents that sit on a DRP. They are planning and architectural professionals across the GTA, so they're not residents. I'll say it again. It was because of the fact that we had the planning partnership has been involved at the very beginning of this site plan, and they are a member of the DRP. And we felt that since they were part of the process at the beginning, we would stay with the urban designer.
Councillor?
And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'm mixing up committees because I know we selected a committee to do these types of reviews, and I know for a fact there are residents on there. Maybe I'm referring to a different committee.
Mr. Waters, I maybe there might be one, but I think that a majority of them are not residents, they're professionals, but there might be, you're right, I think you're right, Councillor, there is one, I think that is, but I'd have to look at the names again.
There's definitely one.
Yeah.
It's not more. I know of one specifically, but.
Okay.
So whatever, I'm disappointed we didn't reach out to, or maybe we did and some of them didn't show up. I don't know, it's still very confusing to me.
Okay, Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to follow up to that, is the design review panel part of stable neighborhoods, or do they encompass all? I'm just trying to remember. And is that part of stable neighborhoods? Just want to make sure.
Everything.
It's everything? Okay. Okay, that's fine. To you, Mr. Mayor, I think I did support this previously as well. And I know the design is, we have very similar ones at Yonge and Wellington. My basis is that we approve those, and it's each to their own in terms of taste. I would like to be maybe a little more heritage looking, but we've gone so far in the direction now, and the timing as well. So I'm going to support this development. I think it serves a purpose. To Councillor Gaertner's point, there's 1 bedrooms, which I was happy to see, 2 and a couple of 2+ den. So I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Before we go to Councillor Gaertner for a second time, Mr. Waters, when it comes to the looks and the character of the structure itself, we can put forward some thoughts of what we would like to see as a council, and that would still come back to us at the site plan phase. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we're at the site plan phase now. So once you grant approval in principle, it's now sort of the more technical details that we need to iron out. So if there's any suggestions that council would like to see incorporated into the elevations, the building materials, I would like to hear those now, and then we can work with the applicant to make those adjustments.
Thank you. And I think that if council wants to get that out there, I would encourage it, because I know that when I saw that this was coming back to us, I remember the conversation that we had originally, and that was a lot of the conversation was as far as the looks of it, the feel of the development, the character. We all agreed that this was an area that needed to have, some appropriate development, but it was about how it looked, and the conversation revolved around a more of a historic look. Some people wanted a little bit more of a futuristic look. I think that something needs to be more on that historic side. So I think that if you go with more of that traditional original brick would be kind of my my favorable way to move forward as far as, that old Toronto fire hall brick or Chicago old style brick. And with some black and grays in there. And I think that would kind of ultimately give the kind of look with a few more enhanced moldings. And I know that comes with a price when it comes to the development, but I think that where they're putting it is, as was mentioned, this is right in the center. This is across the street from Library Square, essentially. And in my conversations with anyone is that these units they're gonna have no problem selling them. So if they have to spend a few more dollars to make it look right, then by all means, they need to spend a few more dollars to make it look right. So I would encourage everyone, maybe during the next couple of weeks, maybe just put out some thoughts with Mr. Waters and let him know exactly what you'd like to see there as far as from the style, the type of brick, the moldings, anything that you'd like to see there. And I'm sure that he can get that point across to the applicant, and then we can have a little bit more of a discussion come council. Councillor Gaertner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must be missing a link here through you to Mr. Waters. There's 53 apartments. Are they using just a 1 standard or are they using the 1.1?
Mr. Waters?
Through Mr. Mayor, they're using the standard that's in the bylaw from 2018, which is 1.
Councillor?
Okay, I thought it was 1.1. I do like the fact that there's some 1 bedrooms, but I voted against this initially for many reasons. And at this point, I can't vote for it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Call a vote. Oh, Councillor Gillen, second time.
Thank you. I don't think I spoke to it as of yet, but that's okay. I only have one thing to say. Just listening around the table, I obviously wasn't here on council when this was approved. I do remember sitting in the audience and hearing what everybody had to say in respect to the materials. I don't have a problem with the design, but if I were to give some feedback, I would like to see a little bit more old world brick and just kind of give it that more, that you can do the urban, modern, downtown, lofty kind of look and still, kind of achieve that historic kind of feel, but be modern at the same time. And perhaps maybe that's something that Mr. Waters could communicate on my behalf of how I feel that maybe that look could be achieved just based on what I'm hearing around the table. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, council, as I said, I'd encourage you all to reach out to Mr. Waters and have your thoughts known. So call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Council 8:57, we'll take our health break instead of starting the next one. So we'll see you at 9:10. I'll give you an extra 3 minutes. Council, I just need one more to start. Thank you. So we'll move to 8.6. Alternative locations for the Aurora Family Leisure Complex Skateboard Park. Recommendation 1, that report number OPS 21-012 be received. 2, that the condition on the approval of capital project number 72281 AFLC skate park reconstruction in the amount of $1,195,000 be lifted and the project proceed. Would anyone like to move the recommendation? Would anyone like to move a recommendation to just receive it at this time? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gallo, thank you. Comments or questions on this item? Who would like to start? Because I know there's going to probably be a lot. So Councillor Gallo, go ahead.
All right, I'll start it off and just express my continued frustration with this project. I actually went this morning and walked the entire thing just to give me a sense of its condition. And well, my feeling is that I'm not going to approve this. My feeling is to take the $600,000 and figure out how to fix it, and not a penny more. I struggled with the $600,000 after we already spent, well, we budgeted $800,000, and we know how that ended. So there's no way I would accept anything more than that. I want it fixed. I want it for the community. I'm not interested in the improvements, lights and everything else. Maybe they can come later at a second time. But my view is not a penny more than $600,000, and staff figure out how to do it.
Thank you,
And I'd
Councillor.
love to hear everyone else's view on this.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'd certainly agree that, we need to have some more discussions and even more information around this. I agree that it's disappointing to see that the cost continues to climb. And even from the conversations I've had with staff, I'm not even sure if this is going to be the final price. My understanding is that this tender went out a while ago. Whether the price is being held or not, I'm not sure. But then further to that, we've just had a conversation about rising costs of concrete and so forth. And I don't even know if this project would be subject to that. But, I guess I'll start there. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Sarah Teenkamp, how confident are we that there would be no further increases to the cost of this, given that I believe you said the proposal went out last year with regards to the price and the identification of it?
Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we recently reached out to the consultant and just asked them to clarify whether the cost estimate that they provided that fed the additional funds requested was accurate. They came back to us and said that with all their experience and in the industry to date this year, that those costs to reconstruct the skateboard park would fall in line with what we're requesting. That being said, when we would potentially go out to formal tender later this year, market value may come back more just because of all the other extenuating circumstances that have arisen due to commodities and things with COVID.
Councillor?
Then, I think there needs to be a further explanation of why the cost of balloon, because, we had a consultant's report way back when, if you go back to 2019, we hired a consultant, they did boreholes, they did extensive, testing based on the report that we were presented with at the time. And if you go back and read that report, they seem to infer when they identified the cost that it was for demolition and reconstruction and all of that. And that's where that $600,000 figure came to. But yet, when we've gone out and got a further consultant, there's a big variation. So, I guess for myself, I'd like to understand, either how the previous consultants got it wrong, or what happened in between, because when I read that report, it seems like they've covered everything with regards to the costing to rebuild and move it. And so, I guess that's one piece. And then the second piece really is, I know that when we had it before us and council agreed to spend the additional dollars to get it fixed, we went back out to the community, and there are some additional thoughts to enhance the park. That's part of the recommendation in front of us. But I don't think I've ever seen actually what a rendering of what this new park would look like. Is it substantially different than what we have proposed today? Or is it just really the addition of that watering station and some lights and those amenities that was identified for, I think, $138,000 through you, Steenkamp?
Steenkamp?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, first off, I can't speak to how the consultant came to the numbers in the original report on the condition assessment with the 600,000 replacement. All I can speak to is that the consultant that we're currently using specializes in skateboard park construction, has many trades within them that does this work regularly. So we're very confident that the pricing that they've given us that requires the increase of the 500 and some odd thousand is justified, and certainly is accurate in these conditions. With regards to the additional amenities, the rendering of the current skate park will stay the same. There will be some just subtle changes in the concrete features within it, and that is not certainly driving up the cost. The 138 is specifically just for shade structure, the water station as indicated, and the lighting. So those could be not installed at this point in time and deferred for future installation. It's certainly feasible to do that within the design.
Councillor?
Thank you. And we've seen these situations before. We most recently had it with the fire station, whereby members of the joint committee had to really go back to the design and drawing and make amendments to it to ensure that it fit within a certain budget parameters. And I think, for myself, I would have liked to have seen in the report some of these options. Whether or not council would agree to it or not, I'm not sure, but I think it's important to have there so that if we want to maintain that funding envelope, there are some choices or some options there. I don't want to just fence off the skate park and not have it to be used. I think it is a good asset to have. I think that it is well used. And I'd certainly like to find a way to make this work. But similar to Councillor Gallo, I have an issue with the price tag at this point, and I'd like to have either some options or discussions or some creative thoughts around how we can get this price down and get it reopened again, or at least get it safe again, so that the issues are fixed and it can be used for many generations to come.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, I got Councillor Humphreys, then Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Humphreys?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if Councillor Gilliland was before me, if it doesn't matter.
Just the way I had it written down.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think I was probably one of the top supporters of a skate park here, and I supported it 100% when we needed to rebuild. Just getting a bit concerning now, and similar to what we've heard previously through Councillor Thompson and Councillor Gallo is, what can we do? I know Ms. Steenkamp has provided some good information. It's just worrisome that it's gone so much, almost, from the original price doubled, but quite a hefty cost. Just a quick question. I'm going to ask it just in case, but through Mr. Mayor to Ms. Steenkamp, do you feel that there's any way that we can salvage the current skate park through repairing some good solid repairs rather than just ditching it all, starting over again? I know we need to think about safety, absolutely, And it is a very well-used skate park. It's always busy. And even now when you don't want the kids there, they're still trying to use it and fix it themselves, I think, from what I see. But is there anything else are there other options, or is this just not feasible?
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly it is feasible to do some repairs to it. It's a longevity of those repairs that I think staff are concerned about, and the length of the asset. The root of the problem is the drainage. There's water underneath the concrete in the supporting substructure, and there was never adequate drainage provided as per the original plan. The other issue is that there is insufficient rebar within the concrete that holds its structure. So while you can do some repairs to mitigate the problem, I think at the end of the day, they will be short-term and not provide the longevity of the asset.
Right.
Councillor?
Thank you. I think, Mr. Mayor, yes. And what's concerning is you might be spending good money after bad and continually do that. It may not be worth it in the long run. If there's anything we can do, if the vendor can help us in any way, I know it's not there. Are we, by the way, with you, Mr. Mayor, we're not using the same vendor, are we? Just to double check that. Just want to 100% sure.
I think that I think that vendor from that whole project
is all gone. I thought so. It was last term, but I mean, I just
actually no, it was 2 terms ago.
oh,
So.
2 terms ago. Oh my gosh, 2 terms ago. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm glad these long gone. They're long gone, that's for sure. But thank you, Ms. Jenkamp. I just wish there was another solution or something that we can do to help minimize this kind of horrific pain that we're feeling. And I do believe more than ever that the kids and young adults need this area. So it's just a shame how it's all worked out. But I'll listen to some further comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. And I think most of my questions were asked. I guess my only comments would be that it's unfortunate it wasn't the best investment. And it's, I really want to see some other solutions or options. Do we just cut our losses and fill it in and, look at it down the road just for safety? Do we just do some repair jobs until we get by? I certainly am not in support of spending this amount of money at this time with what's being presented today. But it just kind of feels like one of those, those bad stocks you buy and you keep holding on and hope that it gets better, but it's not, it just stinks. And, I just feel like we're kind of at that threshold where, maybe the smartest thing to do is to cut our losses and start over somewhere else when it makes sense. But right now, I want to see some more detail what those choices are and what that looks like if we were to do that and go down that road.
Thank you. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The options available to us now are not appealing at all. I see the relocation costs or the relocation options, whether it be Fleury Park or the other locations. They seem to have some hurdles in terms of their construction costs as well, because of whether it be the water table or the water issues there. And I'm not convinced at all that we should rebuild a skateboard park at this point. Frankly, I would be much happier spending $1.2 million on parking, whether we need it or not, just because I know parking lot can't really break down earlier than 8 to 10 years. So because we have a lack of options right now, I don't think we should feel impelled to make a decision. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Steenkamp, do we need to put in more resources, repairs or maintenance in order for users to enjoy the park as is right now, or are we okay for this season?
Ms. Steenkamp.
Currently, staff monitor the park daily. We have done some repairs to mitigate some of the issues. It is safe and usable currently, though certainly not ideal, and it will continue to deteriorate. So the amount of time it will take to get to a point where we'd have to close it, I can't necessarily speak to that. This year was a particularly mild winter, so we didn't have the deep frost that causes the heaving and cracking to the extent that we've had a couple of years prior. So, you know, we could very conceivably have the park open for, you know, maybe 2-3 years down the road and then have to close it. So will there need to be some additional funding potentially in operations to help keep it open? Yes, there very well could be, but we'd have to explore what those are as they arise.
Councillor?
Thank you. For any kind of minor repairs that might be necessary to keep the park going for the next 2 or 3 years, I forget what the amount is currently, but what is the delegated authority amount where staff does not have to come back to council for maintenance costs?
Ms. Tinkamp?
We have, through you, Mr. Mayor, there is, through our operational budget, there is funding there that helps us maintain our assets. So currently we haven't been spending a significant amount. And we're able to fund it through our operating. If it got to the point where we couldn't support it through our operating, then we'd have to come back to council for additional funds.
Councillor?
Would it be reasonable to request, say, you know, if there's any maintenance involved beyond even 10,000, can we make a request, even though procedures don't require you to come back to council? But if there's any repairs or maintenance needed, can council be notified of that?
Ms. Tinkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly we could address council and inform them. I think that potentially could be done through the operating budget at the end of the year.
Okay, great, thank you. My feeling is until we have better options, I don't want to move into making a decision on what we're going to do, because I don't feel like I have sufficient options to make that decision. And given that we do have perhaps even one season to deliberate, and for staff to come out with some more options and for council to deliberate as well, I'm happy with leaving things as is. And you know, if staff could let us know, and we'll certainly, you know, talk about that in this year's operating budget or for 2022. But between now and budget time, as the season is now until, you know, September, October, if staff could notify us should any significant charge be laid on this skateboard park. And for me, anything beyond 10,000 is, I'd like to know about it. Thank you. And that's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gaertner, and then I got Councillor Gallo second time. Councillor Gaertner?
Thank you. To Ms. Tinkamp, do you know how much we spent on this originally, to build it originally?
Ms. Tinkamp?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't offhand, but I can.
Thank you. I'm trying to remember myself. When I heard that it was going to cost $600,000 to basically do a new park, because that would include, you know, just taking up what's there now, I thought that was too low an estimate. So I'm not surprised that it will cost more. We know from the report that there's nowhere else in conjunction with the rec center where we can put this. And, you know, that probably will be the case forever after, unless somehow we get a nice hunk of land. I think we have to decide if we want to provide a skateboard park for the kids or not. We said we wanted to, we did. It's not their fault that it didn't work out. It's not, it could be a more challenging park. We We just didn't have enough room. But it's really well used, and it's really important that the kids have it this year. And we are treating them a bit like second-class citizens, but I agree. I would like to see this operate at least for this summer. We have kids who've had a tough time. They've got a lot of access energy. And it's not only for the kids that use the skateboard park. Their friends come, they sit, they don't behave badly from what I've seen. It's just a very wide open, easy to monitor, safe place for the kids to hang out. So, I'm okay with opening it for the summer and seeing what we can do to just keep it going. And if it costs more than $10,000, then it costs more than $10,000. If that's our choice, we have to make sure that it's in somewhat good repair for the kids. But going forward, we have to decide, do we want to give them a skateboard park? There was discussion about this for years, and finally we decided to do it, and it didn't work out for many reasons, but here we are. I want the kids to have a skateboard park, and frankly, I'm always a penny pincher, but if it costs this much money, it costs this much money. I think to take it away from them would be a really bad idea. So that's how I'm feeling right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, second time.
I think I can answer some of Councillor Gaertner's questions.
Thank you.
I was there, and it was budgeted at 800,000, and we spent 600,000, and I was so happy that we were going to get a savings, but ultimately we put that $200,000 back into the project. There was really no savings at the end of the day. If I remember correctly, at the time we had multiple options, and this was the more expensive option that we went with because we wanted to do a better job. And here we are. And I still feel there's no real accountability to what happened, but I can't change the past. I can just make decisions going forward. And I too want it open, and I don't think we need to spend any money this year to have it open. I think it's, I walked it and I thought I heard that it's in a safe condition right now. I'm somewhat disappointed. It just seems to get worse and worse that we hired a consultant, told us it cost $600,000, and now we have a new consultant telling us that it's $1.195 million. If you add it all together, we're at somewhere around $2 million for a skate park. There's no way I could move forward with that concept. I'd love to know whether we've actually got an answer from a professional engineer that maybe specializes in concrete, whether we can get a professional opinion to repair what's there, injections, something. I have limited experience with high-rise condominiums that you don't knock down a high-rise condominium if you have a leak in the foundation. There's ways of fixing it. And I'm wondering whether or not it's worth spending some additional money to get an expert in that field specifically to see whether or not there's some types of injections that we can do to at least maintain what's there for the next 4, 5, 6 years until we can figure out how to repair it.
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we haven't looked at a consultant to give us recommendations on how it could be repaired in the short term. Staff was just looking at the fact that it was a long-term asset, and we thought the optimum decision was to replace it completely for the longevity of it. We can certainly consult with an engineer and some concrete experts about doing surface repairs and some mitigation of the risk.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I mean, to me, that would be the logical next step for me. And if we go about doing that, or if we actually end up replacing the thing, I'd highly recommend using stainless steel or something that doesn't rust. The metal we used is rusting. The guardrails, the fences that are there are rusting, and maybe we've just left it and not maintained it because we felt like we were gonna replace it, and that's fair. But you know, I don't think we've ever been shy in terms of spending money on the best we can get, and we spent $600,000. We should have had at least stainless steel on all of the metal elements that are there. If we do end up replacing this, highly recommend that. If you walk it right now, it's somewhat embarrassing that it's built in 2013 or so, and the railings are all rusted and really need a lot of repair. So my view would be to spend a little bit of money now, get a professional to give us an opinion on whether or not we can repair what's there and give it some life for the next 10 years or so.
Councillor Humphreys, second time.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I really appreciate Councillor Gall's comments there in terms of looking at this, you know, from individuals who this is their subject matter expertise in order to save, if we can, repair, because, you know, the kids do use it. That's in my mind. And for us to, you know, it's not their fault that this happened. It's not our fault that this, you know, turned out this way. It's not right. When you hear about the grand total, it's really disappointing. But if there's an opportunity to, you know, get a professional opinion, as Councillor Gall suggested, you know, if there's a way we can get this, a little life out of this, and then maybe see where it can go, I would appreciate that. I don't know if it needs to be a motion, or can staff just follow up on that? Because I think that's a good start before we go on to the next steps.
Ms. Steenkamp, I want to ask, I'll go to our CAO. Mr. CAO, do we need to give clear direction on this as far as a motion, or can staff take away what the conversation is at the table, and we can just receive this evening?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I don't have any problem with taking the direction we've received here, and we'll keep investigating.
Okay, I think that overall, and Councillor Gaertner, before I go to you for a second time, I still got Councillor Humphrey still got the floor, but I'll just say that basically what I'm hearing around the table is that let's have it open for the time being, safe. Let's monitor it. Let's do what we need to do to make sure that it stays open for the time being, up to obviously a cost that doesn't approach too much, and therefore it would come back to council for us to take a look at enough discussion. And in the meantime, for staff to consult with a expert engineer, expert concrete person that can look at ways that we can mitigate this and possibly have it last longer at a more reasonable price. Did I just capture everything? Is that okay? All right, Councillor Humphreys, did you want to finish up on you're good? Councillor Gaertner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just heard Ms. Steenkamp say mitigation of the risk. Could you speak to that, please?
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, obviously, because there are deficiencies, there's raised concrete, spalling of concrete. Risks are associated with that when you are skateboarding. As you can appreciate, you need a very smooth surface for skateboarding. So those surfaces create risk. So we manage those risks by different means, and currently the skate park is safe for operation.
Councillor?
Thank you. And with respect to the longevity, I mean, if we don't solve the drainage problem, there is no longevity here. I may be wrong, but could Ms. Steenkamp answer that one?
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct. The drainage is the ultimate problem, and the rebar within the structural concrete. So
Ah.
long term, it will not meet its life expectancy, which would be expected at 50 years.
Councillor,
I'm sorry, could you just say that last part again?
Ms. Steenkamp?
Life, through you, Mr. Mayor, the life expectancy on a skateboard park would be upwards of 50 years. So,
Holy
so based
moly.
on that, it will continue to heave and degrade because of those issues with the rebar and the drainage. So certainly, as I said, we could potentially get some short-term life out of it, maybe even upwards of 10 years. And that's something we could explore with the consultant when we look at doing the repairs and the temporary.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, call a vote on to receive. All those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Move to the next ones, 8.7, future off-leash dog park locations. Recommendation is 1, that report number OPS 21-013 be received. 2, that staff include the Engelhard Nursery property in the 10-year capital plan for construction of a future off-leash dog park with trail connection to Shepherd's Bush / Tim Jones Trail System. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gilliland, seconder. Councillor Gallo, thank you. Any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gaertner?
If you could just give me a sec, please.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's a great idea. I had a question, but I can't remember what it is. So I guess that's all for now.
Thank you, Councillor Gaertner. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Again, to Mrs. Steenkamp, I just want to understand the recommendation because it speaks to being the Engelhard Nursery property onto the, but in the attachments, we have 3 potential locations. So just speaking to location B, which is Edward Street, and location C, which was identified as Industrial Parkway South. Are they already earmarked as a potential off-leash dog park? And so they don't need to be included in the recommendation? Or are you recommending that out of the 3 sites, the preference is for A?
Ms. Steenkamp?
For you, Mr. Mayor, I'm recommending the preference would be location A.
Councillor?
Now, the one, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mrs. Steenkamp again, I guess the one obstacle or deficiency with section A, location A, really has to do with the parking. There's no immediate parking. You're suggesting that they would park at the Hallmark lands and then traverse over to the site. Is that sort of the biggest, I guess, negative associated with that site, or do you see other issues with it potentially?
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would say that would be the differentiating factor for that site is that it doesn't have immediate on-site parking availability. However, it has many other positives. Thank you very much. So certainly it has different frontages. You can access it off the Engelhard, you can access it off the Tim Jones Trail within Shepherd's Bush, and you will be able to access it right off Van Dorp Side Road. To speak to the off-leash trail component, it's very close to the trail system. We would have to incorporate a piece of trail to achieve access to the property from the Tim Jones Trail and the Shepherd's Bush. But I think all of those things are positive in its favor. Accessibility wise, only a portion of it is actually accessible. It is the top portion off of Engelhard that would be accessible because it's the flattest feature, which is currently housing the tree nursery. The rest of the property is undulating. It slopes away from that plateau at the top of the property, and makes its way down to the bush. So it's very terrain. It provides a large parcel for just mowing pathways for people to let their dogs off leash. So we just see it as a good location.
Councillor?
Thank you, and I appreciate the information. You know, it kind of follows up on the conversation we had last week with regards to off-leash parks and trails and some of the concerns that were raised at the last meeting. You know, to be honest, when I looked at the three, my preference really is the other locations, partly because I do think that having the parking adjacent to it is a benefit. I certainly see you know, the value with regards to the first one and its association to the woodlot and the trails. But for myself, I'm not necessarily sold that access to the trail is a positive thing. And so while the recommendation is for location A, I actually prefer B or C.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Teenkamp, you mentioned that option A is your recommendation, and but it says in the recommendation that it's the Englehart Nursery property is what I see in the recommendation in the report. So is the Englehart Nursery property, is that option A, which says location A, Van Dorp Woodlot area?
Yes, Councillor, that's, I'll answer that.
That is?
That's correct.
Okay. I am partial to option A as well, mainly because, it's from my understanding, from my interaction with Mr. Waters earlier, that this is zone in environmental protection. Now, through you to Mr. Waters or Ms. Teenkamp, what is the current zoning for location B and C?
Ms. Teenkamp? Or Mr. Waters, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to look that up for you if you give me a second.
Okay.
Well, I guess where I'm going at is, well, you can interrupt me when you find it, Mr. Waters. But where I'm going with it is that it seems like it's right in industrial commercial land, because it's surrounded by, it's right in the Hallmark area, and it's town-owned property that we could have other options utilizing those two properties, and to turn them into a dog park. And no offense against dog owners or dogs, but it seems that the right fit, because you already have environmental property here, and it's almost 25 acres, and we can't use that for anything else. So I would endorse location A, which is what Ms. Teenkamp is recommending. And I certainly don't want to be using valuable land that we can use for other options, when certainly location A seems preferable. So those are my comments. I'm not sure if Mr. Waters found the...
Mr. Waters, did you get that information yet? Or if you want, you can just text me and let me know, and then I'll
Sure. Yeah,
I will
so
do that.
was,
Yes, yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll text you with the answer.
Thank you. And I'll let you, Councillor Kim, I'll let you know as soon as I get the answer.
okay, sure. And I'd be in favor of staff recommendation for option A, but I would definitely not be including B or C. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Yeah, I would be in full support of option A. I absolutely, I love what you guys brought forward. It makes total sense to me. Councillor Kim brought up some great points about why B and C wouldn't be conducive. I love the fact that there's a trail that can be integrated. There's multiple different ways that you can enter it. There's a trail component. The terrain is a little bit different, so it gives it some, I guess, it's nice to walk on without being some boring square, to lack of a better term. I know in High Park in Toronto, there's some dog parks there that have a lot of different terrain that adds interest. And, you know, you as a homeowner can walk around and not kind of feel like you're walking around in a circle or just standing and walking and watching your dog run. As far as the parking, I really don't have a problem with that distance. That's like 0.1 kilometers to get to the entrance. The walk that I do with my dogs, the shortest walk I'll do is 3 kilometers. So 0.1 kilometers just to get to the trail entrance is not going to be a big deal. I think that's what we do. We want to take your dogs for a walk. So I'm okay with that distance. I think you guys did your due diligence with that. And again, I think the great thing is that if you can enter it from a trail, perhaps you're parking way down somewhere else, or you're entering the trail from where you live. And that's kind of like your end game. You walk the trail and you end up at the dog park, you run around for a bit, you turn around, you walk back, and you've, you know, a nice hour of your day. So I like what you've come back with. It's not in a residential area where we're getting a lot of pushback. You guys had some limited options to present, and I think this is great. And I think this is nice. That's a nice green spaced area that people can enjoy to walk in safely. And give the service to people of Aurora that they need, which is the lack of dog parks. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I just had some questions about option A. There's currently a tree farm in at least the northern portion of the property. Is that, through you, Mr. Mayor, is that intending on being removed?
Yes.
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it would. Currently, we've removed approximately half of the trees off of that location, and the rest are due to be removed in the next year or so. So yes, it would be removed, and that flat plateau area where the trees are actually planted would become the accessible area.
Councillor?
And is there no option to provide any parking on the south area along Vandorf? I don't know what the landscape is there.
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's actually a small tributary that runs along there, parallel to Vandorf. So there's an incumbents there with a water course. It also slopes up significantly. It would be a bit of an engineering exercise to actually put a parking lot in, if it was actually feasible, because some of the land there is certainly would be more than likely under LSRCA, and it is EP lands.
Councillor?
Okay, and the crosswalk, which is, you know, the width of a car going one way, there's no option to widen that. I think we don't own enough width there in order to get 2 cars in and out, in order to have a potential park on the north side where there's flat land.
Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct. This is a catwalk. I believe it's about 12 feet wide, so it won't accommodate anything else other than just one-way traffic.
Councillor?
Just the last question in terms of, you know, it would be a significant change in use, and obviously a lot of people would be in and out of there, and a significant change in use. Do we have any concerns with the surrounding businesses that are there, and the activity that we're proposing to have there? Is there any concerns with them?
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly we don't have any immediate concerns. I mean, we are constructing a 2 ball field facility right across the road in an industrial area, which will, in our opinion, have a significant amount of residential traffic, and so the dog park we don't foresee as it being any concern to the businesses. However, we haven't consulted them.
Councillor?
Okay, I guess yeah, that's one concern that I would have, because I guess they're, you know, we have a right to do something different there. It's not an issue, but they're enjoying some quiet space back there that would be somewhat disrupted significantly with this change. Maybe some type of communication to them, letting them know that if we make this decision, that it's coming, and maybe there's some mitigation that we can do to help them out if there is a concern.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim, just to let you know before I go to Councillor Humphreys, Site A is 01 and EP. Site B is E201 and EP. And Site C is 01 and EP. Okay. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Ms. Tankamp, for this report. I'm really happy about it, and quick turnaround time, great feedback that you know, staff heard, and I know there'll be a lot of residents. They'll be really happy with this. Just a quick question: do you know timing? I don't think I read it in the report. When this might be completed? Through Mr. Mayor to Ms. Tankamp.
Ms. Tankamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As I indicated, we still have some trees to be removed off the property, and we foresee that being done by the end of 2022. Our recommendation is to put the project in capital budget and bring it back through the 10 years. So if council's desire is to have it sooner than later, then they'll have the opportunity to approve it or deny it.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you very much. Again, I know there's lots of people will be very happy to hear about this, including a grade school that came up looking for a park, and this was another exciting alternative. So I'll be happy to report to the teacher who will be retiring, Miss Norma Moffat, who brought her kids in about 4 or 5 years ago and now graduating grade 12, that although it's not exactly what initially was thought, that this is a great alternative, because they had mentioned leashless trails as well. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I go to Councillor Gaertner a second time, I think while we go through this process and while we wait for it to get the budget, Ms. Tankamp, if we can make sure that we, as was mentioned, have conversations with the surrounding businesses, but also I think that the residential component on the south side, right? We have a whole subdivision there that used to be Timberlane, the Timberlane Athletic Club, and that whole subdivision is there now just on the south side, as well as you have other housing developments as well throughout there. And so I think maybe if we reach out to them to let them know that this is happening too, so we can see if there's any feedback that comes back from those residents as well. I do foresee some issues along Vandorf. That's my only concern. I see a lot of people coming and parking on Vandorf and just leaving their car there, getting out and going to that gate. That's the most easily accessible one, and I can see that happening down the road. So I think that we need to be cautious about that. I do think it is the best site, but I think that there's some flaws to it that could cause some issues and some problems down the road. And so I think we need to be mindful of those issues and see if there's anything that we can do to rectify those issues as we continue to move forward through this process. So I think let's get as many people as engaged as possible in the area so we can have a full understanding when this comes to budget and we decide whether we want to move forward at a more quicker speed at that time. Because I think we all agree that it's needed. So I look forward to that. Councillor Gaertner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Environmental protection land is of many different types. Do we know exactly what's here? And and also the drainage from the dog park onto EP land?
Ms. Tankamp, did you want me to ask Mr. Waters on that, or did you want to answer that?
If you can ask Mr. Waters.
I'll ask Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For Councillor Gaertner's question was the uses in the EP zone?
Yes, the EP zones and also any runoff basically from dog waste into those lands as well, or into the streams.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't really comment on the runoff from dog waste. I suspect it would seep into the ground because it is part of the, it's a groundwater recharge area, or at least it's close to the moraine, so the soils are different there. In terms of the EP zone, it would, I'd have to go, I'm looking in the bylaw now for the actual uses.
And you don't have to say now, Mr. Waters, but well, certainly that's true. It's near the marine, which is a groundwater recharge area. So we would have to be, I think we would have to do something to prevent that, to prevent anything from contaminating the marine water. I'm sure that can be done. I think it's a great location. What worries me is that there is no accessible parking. So, we're going to maybe have an accessible or more accessible dog park in part, but where are people going to park? Is there a sidewalk on Engelhart? I think there is, but I can't remember. Can't picture it.
Mr. Waters, do you know if there's a sidewalk? Ms. Steenkamp, I see her nodding yes. I think there is a sidewalk there, Councillor Gaertner.
Thank you. Is there any way we could provide some accessible parking?
Ms. Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, from the drawing currently, there is no space to provide accessible parking within the dog park. The only accessible parking would come from Hallmark Lands.
Which is, I wouldn't call that accessible, but I understand what you're saying. Also, you're very experienced with parks and environmental land. Could you think of how this area could be protected, or how the moraine could be protected?
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that would take some investigation. Number one, I'm not an expert on how much dog waste would actually penetrate into the ground and then therefore into the water table. So I think we'd need to do some consulting on that.
Thank you. And maybe from our other dog park, I think it has a similar issue. It's not on the moraine, but it does drain into the stream. So maybe they have some information on that. And would the surface be wood chips?
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that certainly is not the intent for this dog park. Potentially where the flat plateau is would be wood chips. The remainder of the park would just remain natural. And there would be potentially the users would formulate pathways, or we could mow some pathways for their use.
Councillor?
Okay. And this would be like the other dog park we proposed. It would have to, it would be run by volunteers.
Ms. Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be correct.
Councillor?
So there's a long way to go before we can put this in place. But one of the advantages that we have a dog park in the north area of town, so now we could have one in the south. So that would be good. The parking is worrisome though.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor, I just pulled it up. Environmental protection, permitted uses, number 5, low intensity recreational uses that require very little terrain or vegetation modification, and few, if any, buildings or structures, including but not limited to. There's a few there, but that's, I mean, I would assume that the dog park would fall under that clause, but.
Thank you. I'll do some more work on it as well. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, second time.
Thank you. Ms. Steenkamp, just going back to the location A, the woodlot. The parking that's identified on the map, is that parking being built for the dog park, or are they going to use the parking lots that's being envisioned for the baseball diamonds that are there?
Ms. Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be a combined parking lot. So it is being designed for the baseball diamonds, and we anticipate it could support some other use.
Councillor.
Thank you very much. Again, through you to Mrs. Steenkamp. So if you were looking at potential costing of those three options, you could say that perhaps location A might be less expensive because you're not constructing an entire parking lot as you would for B or C, but taking advantage of what's going to be built there for the baseball diamonds and either expanding or utilizing that. Would that be a fair comment?
Ms. Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, potentially it could be. Any parking lot I would propose for the other two locations, certainly I wouldn't recommend it being asphalted. I would recommend just having a gravel lot like we currently support at our other dog park. The location A would require a significant amount of fencing compared to the other locations. But the cost of constructing a fully asphalt parking lot would offset that if that was the desire in these other locations.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Call the vote. Oh, Councillor Gaertner, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, is the vote for, sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me. Is the vote for approval or for information?
I believe the recommendation was moved and seconded. Mr. Clerk, is that correct?
Sure.
I believe it was Councillor Humphries and Councillor Gilliland.
That's correct. I thought Councillor Gaertner might have been asking for the actual wording of the motion.
Yeah, so that we did more than receive. So the second clause is that staff include the Englehart Nursery property in the 10-year capital plan for construction of a future off-leash dog park with trail connection to Shepherd's Bush / Tim Jones Trail System. That was what the recommendation was that was put on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, council. We'll move to 8.8 Parkland naming. Councillor Gallo, should I just come to you and ask you if you want to go ahead?
I'd like to receive and refer to staff. I'd like to have a discussion about this, and I'll be putting forward a notice of motion.
Yeah, and I believe that notice of motion is going to closed session, correct? Yes, okay. So would someone like to second that? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Mr. Clerk, are we good? You know what's going on?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes. Motion to refer back to staff.
Okay, thank you very much. Comments, questions, everyone good? We'll call a vote. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. New business. Go around the room. Councillor Kim, new business? No. Councillor Gilliland, new business? No. Councillor Humphries, new business? Yep, go ahead.
Hi, through you, Mr. Mayor, just one item. I just want to first of all thank staff under Ms. Steenkamp's preview in terms of the burlap that was given out or being given out this week at the JOC to address this nuisance of a species LDD, the Lambert despair, and it's causing some real havoc. I received a couple of concerns, well, more than a couple actually, in terms of what else can the town do to help, in particular, the trees on the boulevards that are ours. And speaking to Ms. Steenkamp, there's 22,000 trees this town. So very difficult to try to, I guess, get staff out there to treat the trees. But what I would love is if Ms. Tankamp could provide just a bit of an update on what we're doing so far, what we've done, and if there's any other ideas that our residents can look forward to or participate in to help the prevention of the damage of so many trees in our town. I had one resident saying that she can't even walk. They're falling off the trees, just walking in the middle of the street. There's just so many of these caterpillars that are really invasive.
Ms. Tankamp?
Ms. Tankamp, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So today we have launched a fairly extensive communication plan in conjunction with York Region and our fellow municipalities. We have a forestry group, and we coordinated early on in the season and evaluated the counts of the moth egg masses, and we knew it was going to be a challenging year in all of York Region. We all have some severe pockets, and Aurora's got some very intense areas where they are feasting on our trees. That being said, we will see some defoliation, but we need to keep in mind that trees are very resilient at the end of the day. They all have secondary leaves available to them. If they do become defoliated, they will flush out in a second set of leaves. This week, we just started on Monday, we have been giving out burlap. It has been really, really well received by the community. It's been a great opportunity for staff to engage with them, answer questions. People have been really responsive. They've been letting us know that they're going to wrap the boulevard tree on our behalf and maintain it. And we are so appreciative of that. Each resident has been given, that's come to the JOC, has been given 3 pieces of burlap. Depending on the size of the tree, you could cover upwards of 8 trees on your property with this burlap. Other means for residents, if they don't have burlap or they need additional resources, bed sheets, old bed sheets, t-shirts, towels, they're all work well in trapping the caterpillars on the within the burlap. Burlap maintenance, though, will fall on the residents to eliminate the caterpillars off of it. It's not a pleasant job, and nobody's in favor of it, that's for sure. As for next steps, it has been a very dry spring. So we will be really sending out a communication plan to ask residents to help assist, let them know that they can water their trees on their property. That'll help them leaf back out, won't put them under any more stress than they already are. We're going to request if they can water the trees on the municipal boulevards, that would be fantastic, because as you can appreciate, the 22,000 trees, staff can't get around everywhere in town. In addition, we started this week, we've been treating through injection process. The same product that we use to treat for EAB is registered for the LDD caterpillars. So we have been treating some of our more stately oak trees, because that is the preferred species that the LDD wants to prey upon. So the council will be familiar with the big oak in front of Church Street School. So we are treating that. We're treating numerous oaks within the Arboretum, and these are all very old stately oaks that are in a state of decline just naturally. So they're more susceptible to being preyed upon by these insects. So that's kind of where we are. We continue to engage with the region and our other municipal partners. Everybody's struggling with a lot of public interest and concern, and we'll be doing some additional egg counts come this fall to see what it'll look like next year. There is a virus that's out there that pertains to the caterpillars. It's very aggressive. You can it's actually the first word in it. It's NPV, but the first word is nuclear. So that gives you a little bit of sense of how aggressive it is. It gets into the caterpillars and kills them dead. They kind of equate it to that it spreads similar to COVID. It's really transferable. We are not sure whether we have it in Aurora, but LSRCA and TRCA has both indicated that it's in Simcoe County and some areas to the south of us. So they anticipate that with this virus, it will significantly knock the population down in certain locations. So our hope is that it spreads to Aurora and will help us out naturally.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you so much, to Mr. Mayor, Ms. Camp. I really appreciate that update. And I think just one last comment, and I know that I talked to you and others, staff, there, some residents were hoping that we can get, some resources or outside resources to come and help us, protect the trees and do the burlap work and others. But I think through our conversation, there just wouldn't be enough time to get enough resources to even complete it by the time this ends, which is in about 2 to 3 weeks, right? By the time they finally do their process and this moves on. So I think it's just timing and the constraints against that. So I do appreciate that. I think the residents are still able to continue to get their burlap this week between 9 and 4, I believe, at the JLC. And I love what you mentioned, that they can use materials, tablecloths, old t-shirts, whatever to help, and then pull off the caterpillars. Are pretty gross, but it's what we need to do. And I'm going to keep our fingers crossed that this will not be as big an issue next time. And thank you very much for your reassurances that the trees are resilient. That's very important. Thank you so much for the update. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gaertner, new business?
Well, just to follow on that, Mr. Mayor, I worked on this a lot last year. Maybe I made Ms. Camp a little bit crazy, but it was a problem last year. It was a big problem last year. Not everywhere. In the southeast part of Aurora for sure. It's the most unpleasant thing because there's also droppings from the caterpillars, which is very unpleasant. But they have to be sprayed when they're still eggs before they become caterpillars. So we're way, way past that. Ms. Camp, there was a working group, I think, at the region, or the region had one and brought municipalities into the loop. Was there any, we knew it was going to be a bad year. Was there any thought of spraying?
Ms. Camp?
For you, Mr. Mayor, there certainly was some discussion, but at the end of the day, the spray that is used, while it is a natural, it's derived from the chrysanthemum. It's BTK is what it's called. It actually is non-selective, so it kills anything that is a caterpillar. We felt as foresters that, especially during this important time of year when it's bird breeding, and there are 60 species of birds that actually feed on caterpillars and specifically gypsy moth, that it would be detrimental at the end of the day to be doing that.
Councillor?
Thank you. I believe Toronto did some spraying in the past. Anyway, if there's anything we can learn for next summer, I know you're very knowledgeable on this and certainly in the loop. You could keep us in the loop. But I think the only thing that does really work is aerial spraying. It's a very expensive proposition as well. So I'm sorry to all the residents, but it's nature. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of it right now. And I don't believe it has anything to do with climate change. Ms. Camp, am I right on that?
Ms. Camp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it certainly gypsy or the LDD have been around a significant amount of time. It's not a new pest to Ontario. The last influx that we have had in Aurora was back in the 90s. I think that's the most severe case that we actually had. So we haven't had to deal with it. And I think it's just because it's new, residents are a little alarmed about it. It is very cyclical, you know, roughly every 5 to 7 years, it may spike. And aggressive cold winters do knock down the population, but it has to be significant, like -25 for a long period of time. And as we all know, we haven't experienced that in years, decades, even here in Southern Ontario.
Councillor?
Thank you. It makes for some very unpleasant time in the summer, so I'm really sorry.
Is that all, Councillor?
So I'm sorry, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, new business? No. Councillor Gallo, new business? No. Public service announcements, Councillor Gallo? No. Councillor Thompson, public service announcement? Councillor Gaertner, public service announcement?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Humphreys?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, as a reminder, the Aurora Farmers Market and now Artisan Fair. The artisans were back last weekend. Incredible, busy, amazing market. So if you can make it out between 8 and 1, I know the mayor's there every weekend and others, and it's just incredible. The vendors are thrilled, and I'm just getting lots of great feedback from a lot of new residents who have discovered the market this year, and people don't mind waiting in the lineups. It just gives them an opportunity to go out. Very safely done. So just want to congratulate again staff and the market for making this happen safely every year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland, public service announcement. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I want to say thanks, Councillor Humphreys, for mentioning the market. I go there all the time. It's great. It's a lot of new vendors this year, which is fantastic to see too. Anyway, the one thing I wanted to mention was now that there's second dose vaccines that are available for people who are 80 plus and such, I guess some essential workers as well, just to not forget about pinkcars.ca. That's an organization that's there, all volunteers that are there to help with transportation or book appointments for seniors. So pinkcars.ca, fabulous organization to help get seniors to their appointments. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Kim, any public service announcement? Oh. Okay. I do have a list, but I'm going to forego that. I think there's just one that we need to end on. Just to let everyone know that the flags at all town facilities are flying at half-mast in memory of the tragic deaths of 215 children found buried at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School in British Columbia. Flags will fly at half-mast for 215 hours, 1 hour for each child found buried near the former school. Council, at this time, I just ask if a moment of silence. Thank you, Council. With that, Council, I'll just ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Councillor Gallo, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Council. Have a great week and stay safe, everyone.